go wrong.
How about you ride with me and I'll explain more about it?
It's a nasty plan, but a good one.
Orly, I see you around, friend.
Sure. Just try to stay out of too much trouble. I'll see you soon, I'm sure. And if you should choose to amend your ways and try a different path, well, I'm sure Mr. Jones could help guide you a little.
Come with me, friend.
Family, this is going to be an unpleasant conversation for some of you, because what I'm saying pertains to a number of you. But this is a discussion that doesn't get mentioned anywhere near as much as
Ride
it
with me.
should.
Here's the plan.
For far too long.
These industrialists you're
Talk
robbing.
about the black
They're some of the worst folk I
community
know.
and drugs,
Or at that kerosene and tar plant up the way. They got a train of strike breakers and killers from some detective agency coming in by train. Fresh off some other recent incident. You're going to jump this train, deal with the black-hearted bastards on board, and ride it all the way to the refinery, okay? Once you're there, the guards are going to know you're not detectives here to beat up strikers. So get ready for a fight. The men with the money will probably be in the upstairs office of the refinery. Their cash is yours to divide amongst yourselves. If I hadn't been betrayed by my partner, my brothers-in-law.
Very few of our bad habits did we actually come upon, honestly. Most of them were the result of the fact that we have not had control of our own lives and have lived them. But that doesn't change the fact that just because we are under oppression, that we hold on to anything that white supremacy has saddled us with. Because for us to do so is for us to also refuse to take upon ourselves the responsibilities that power demands. The name of this Thursday evening address is Get High, Get Free. You cannot have both. Show me the people who are strung out and turned up and powerful. Show me the people who make a point that they're going to stay there, stay intoxicated, and also stay in control. You can't find it, it don't work that way. Sure, you can find a few outliers who inspire themselves and just don't take their hands on some power. But as it was to run things, when Disney to stay down, definitely these people just so happen to get their hands on a little bit too much. Even though in spite of their drug addiction, knows how they always lose it. You notice how one follows the other. Returning to my first point, this is not about individuals who are very powerful resources. blacks are at. Let them lose their souls. So consider that just an elaborate way for Professor Truth to tell you, I don't want to hear any of your bullcrap excuses for why it is that you're a junkie. That's what you are, that's the reality, you ain't gonna like it, but I am called Professor Black Truth for a reason. It ain't Professor Black cushion the blow, or Professor Black dance around the subject. I come straight up the middle. And while you can claim that the white media certainly glorified drug abuse in the black community, what you cannot say is that anybody told you that there's anything virtuous about it. A lot of black folks have been looking for some way to hide from white supremacy, and true, there are some who understand that white supremacy is excruciating for us. It hurts to be oppressed. It hurts to be robbed of spirit. It hurts to have your constituted almost 10% of the British government's economic activity. That's how much the Brits love tea. You see that whole idea of tea drinking? That's not even something the Europeans had themselves. They picked it up as part of getting out of their little ice box following the end of the Moorish occupation. That was part of what they picked up. When they got to actually go out to the world, they did very little on their own. Practically everything they had, they picked up from everybody else, and then they turn around later and lied about it and claim we were trading with people when they weren't.
Drink one of them, so for them in the
They just
refrigerator.
don't mention, oh yeah, we didn't know what the hell tea was. Hell, we didn't even have cups or saucers to drink off of. That's why they call it fine china. All the stuff that they got from outside the European world, but I digress. But the Brits had a big problem, though, with all of this tea importation on a massive scale, because what it did was it created a colossal trade imbalance. You had all of this.
Yeah, because they would buy shitloads of tea from China, but since 35% of England's deficit went to China just for tea. Oh, these motherfuckers are dumb.
And then you got to go back to the source and get some more. This made China very rich, and it was also making Britain increasingly poor. So the British decided something has to be done about this trade deficit that we got. Because as Jason Black explained to you, the power of white supremacy is
I
based
told you,
on the strength
that's just weird.
He don't look like the dad.
Yeah, I know.
And see, Harry's taking on Mama, and William taking on Daddy.
So how do you deal with the trade imbalance?
Oh, that like.
What?
That the other party wants. We have to try to
If you're taking on the role of your mama, that means Africa is going to respect you more than your brother. That means if Africa has any dealings with Europe, let alone England, they'll specifically say we'll only deal with him.
Yeah, that's them too.
If you bring anything to our attention, if it's not brought to him, we won't even listen to it.
So the Chinese were not fine with it at all. They were wondering who the hell's bringing all this damn opium. Because people were getting strung out by the millions. But the Brits were fine with it. Because the proceeds
They're making money off of
drug
it.
money was making it where that trade imbalance was starting to become more level. You see, the world's first narco state wasn't Colombia. It was Britain. It was opium that they used as their narcotic of choice. Because there was also another reason the Brits were flooding the Chinese with opium.
Yeah.
Soften the Chinese
Opium dens in China.
because that was also
They were trying to get that. They were trying
Money.
to get the land in China.
What's that trade? The
I say that with all due sarcasm.
one where
Well, you know what it is, opium things
John Cusack in
Dragon something with Jackie Chan and,
and
that's the one we like.
Yeah.
Yeah, we still gonna have to get there.
Yeah.
Mom,
the Chinese were so stupid as to legalize opium.
you want some water or not?
Yeah, I don't know water.
No.
Something like that.
And that would work out very well for the Europeans, but it wouldn't be in the Chinese interest at all. So the Chinese emperor told them, hell no, we ain't legalizing nothing. And you guys better not leave that little Canton island that you guys are on that we got you stuck at. Y'all better not get no ideas about trying to
Got injured at a post-funeral gathering in Minneapolis.
Who?
Two shot and injured at a post-funeral gathering in Minneapolis. Yeah.
God damn.
What?
This is the day before, so don't even think about it. You got your little trade outpost, and that's all you need. But the Chinese emperor decided something still had to be done about all of this uncontained drug activity.
Which one? Where is it? Let's take it back.
And they still did not. They still didn't feel the
are destroying opium by the tons, thousands of tons. That's how much the Brits were smuggling in.
Damn. Daddy, daddy, daddy.
Brits, hey, you gotta stop with all of this pushing this opium in here. This better stop. They wrote a letter to the Queen and
What are you gonna do now?
You can probably guess how receptive she was to that.
Huh? Throw them in the bushes?
Yeah, so we can't see.
Some British sailors got drunk and rowdy.
Just did
To show
what?
these guys haven't changed in 180 years. The same kind of sloppy drunk behavior you see from Brits, whether it be in Japan or whether it be in Africa or whether it be wherever.
Good to see you again,
These
mister.
white Europe, wherever these white supremacists go, they bring that sloppy behavior with them. So it ain't new. It ain't something they picked up from MTV. It's always been this way. But you had some British sailors who decided to get drunk. And two of those sailors beat a Chinese citizen to death.
Ooh.
The British paid the family of the deceased a quickie little tidy settlement. Decided to walk away, but the Chinese government said, nah, those two killers, we want them turned over to us so they can face punishment at our hands. The British said, hell no, these are white men we're talking about here. Just because they killed one of you Chinese, that don't mean a damn thing to us. We're not turning anybody over. The Chinese continued to demand that the killers be handed over, and the British kept refusing. In the end, as a way what they hoped would placate the Chinese, the British held a mock trial on board one of their warships, and they invited the Chinese to observe, but mostly it was to talk.
Fuck that.
And because the sentence that the killers got was they were ordered to pay a fine and they would get a few years hard labor. By the way, that sentence would be overturned by a British court when the killers got back home. But even before that, the Chinese made very clear your sentence ain't satisfactory. By the way, yes, I am bringing up this racial assault in order to make the point that what we're seeing today is not new. It's not some sort of fluke. It ain't some sort of coincidence. This is standard operating procedure for the white supremacists. Wherever they go, wherever they meet, this is just what they do.
Let's go fit on the horse.
So you have the Brits
On the back of it.
in the middle of saying, well, we need to be legalizing this opium in y'all's land. Don't you think? See, the Brits were not about to legalize opium in Britain. They were not about to legalize it there. But the Chinese
They sure did legalize hemp. Then they unlegalized it.
I'm like, oh, we don't even know what it was.
Because you can't pay for hemp, bro.
That's next.
Whatever he says, I'll do tomorrow, okay? He said go over there. At least he's not that white, understand?
Either way, it just doesn't make no sense for it.
I know that.
And I'm like, it's more the fact that I know that.
Yeah, you got something to do with that. I know something to do with it. I know that. But back here, it's burned. Even when I walk, it's burned. So that,
Feet are cold.
so that means yes, I know.
And they weren't talking any forgive crap. They told the Brits, you can keep your little old check. And we ain't forgiving nothing. The Chinese wanted the killers punished to their satisfaction, not the Europeans. So what the Chinese did was they collectively punished the Europeans who were there in Canton. They commanded the Chinese people were not to do any sort of business with the British that involved food. This was to effectively starve them, which they did. They started putting some paint on them, saying you're not, they ordered to it. They found a couple of Chinese who either had soft hearts or soft brains, decided, hey, we're hard to do this. And you know what, we're going to keep an eye on everybody here to make sure y'all ain't trying to sell these guys any doggone honey buns or anything else. We'll see their stomachs touch their backbones before we let them. This blockade is to put some pain on them.
Put a blockade out? Holy shit.
Oh, by the
Who? Chinese?
To the white supremacists.
Oh, white supremacists said that?
No, that's what the Chinese put out there as
The white supremacists.
yeah, the British. So it's like, yeah, go ahead.
What a pure and gentle spirit. I do not trust you.
Taken.
Good luck then. I am sure this will be a most productive partnership. Welcome then, and happy hunting. I know you will be lucky with this.
Before hostilities broke out, the British foreign minister instructed his functionaries to get the Chinese to concede to giving them an island that the British used as an outpost. They didn't want to be simply told, we'll allow you to be here. They said, no, get the Chinese to agree that they're going to wholesale give us an island. They didn't say sell an island. They said, tell them maybe to go ahead and choose an island that we're going to have as sovereign British territory.
Nigga.
Keep in mind, this was 2 years before the Brits would take Hong Kong during the Opium Wars. So you see the plan by the British to seize a piece of Chinese real
Right now,
estate
the British
and then use
are
as an outpost
doing
to
a
basically
whole
run
bunch
China
of
by
shit.
remote control. That wasn't some spontaneous event. It was the
Prince
British
Andrew.
plan all along.
Nobody's crazy about the Queen.
No matter what the Chinese
Nobody's crazy about William and
The first son, everybody loves the
wife.
second son.
Thank you.
that the Chinese would not be able to shut them out of because they
When they took his portrait off the wall at Buckingham Palace,
hostilities broke out.
which is stupid anyway.
Came up during the war. This is what they were talking about in the months leading up to the war.
And then they said, you guys showed their true colors.
Handed to us. Anyway, to make a long
You
story
look like a
short,
monkey.
the Opium Wars basically ended with Europeans eventually prevailing. And part of what the Europeans, what the British wanted was they wanted for the Chinese to eventually concede to making opium legal. Now, the Chinese were willing to make concessions. Y'all want Hong Kong, okay, I guess we can go ahead and part with that. And there'll be some trade concessions, some favorable terms, okay. But when the British kept agitating for, when are you guys going to legalize opium?
Nope.
The Chinese made it very clear that there were two problems they had. The first problem was economic, because they weren't looking to continue seeing money go out the door just for some doggone get high. The second problem the Chinese made clear they had with it was it's not good to have an entire nation of people strung out.
Thank you.
And that's a tie.
That's a deal breaker.
Like they do out here.
Hostilities start up all over again.
Anesthetized.
With that legalizing the opium nonsense, you need to knock it off, which the Brits eventually did. Eventually. But something else that needs to be remembered. Part of the reason that the Chinese infantry, I mean, we already know that the British, they put all their eggs into a naval basket. That's where the old saying comes from, God save the Queen, but for her navy. Because the British put a lot of, because they're an island, they don't have the luxury of being able to trade land for time, which is the typical strategy that continental people use, whether it be the American Revolution or whether it be the Japanese invasion of China. When China was invaded by Japan, they traded land for time. When the Nazis invaded Russia, the Russians traded land for time. That's a typical tactic that continental people use. Because when you got a lot of land, you got that luxury. But when you are an island people,
Where'd you put the man?
you don't have any land that you can trade for time.
Oh, I threw him away.
You're done. So the British put all of their eggs into a naval basket. You have to be able to win your battles on the water because you can't trade land for time.
Turkey.
The Brits already had
They got them out there
to
turkeys.
naval
Wild
warfare.
turkeys. Get them damn big things.
The odds could have been evened up when
The
the
fella?
Chinese army. If it wasn't
That's
for
why
the
you don't
fact
get
that
the
so
fella.
much of the Chinese army
Don't just knock them out.
But you, like, you're wasting all that other meat.
just like the civilians.
You knock them out.
So you
And you
see,
can get back up.
before hostilities had even begun,
Okay.
No, birds, it seems like even when you shoot them with the pellet gun,
They'll get back up.
even if China's navy was not able to match the British navy, the Chinese infantry should have had superior numbers. But the problem was
Saki?
No, that's Japan. Rice wine is China.
The idea of using drugs as a weapon, it's not a new idea. They've been doing it for hundreds of years. They did it in Europe. They did it in Ireland. They did it with the Native Americans. Hey, here's some firewater, Chief Running Mouth, or whatever your name is. Why don't you go ahead and get high? Why don't you go ahead and sign on the dotted line? As soon as you have some more firewater first, of course.
This is where that serial killer.
That's nasty. What the fuck they doing?
This is, I want to say, an 1899 version of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. See, this nigga got
Head taken off, gutted.
spinal column. And I don't know what the fuck he did there. He took the head off. Looks like an arm hanging over there.
Same people like Joe Biden, who co-sponsored the 1986 Anti-Drug Abuse Act, which created the 100-to-1 sentencing disparity.
Elizabeth Bloom.
Powder cocaine. The same Jim Crow Joe who wrote the 94 crime bill, which put draconian punishments in place for even having drugs. The same guys who've been using drugs as the very excuse to
She trying to bring her ratings up, huh? She's trying to bring her ratings up, huh?
Oh yeah.
Get the box.
It won't let me.
All that blood.
And then body parts.
I'm
not looking for over here.
Legalizing opium so long as they controlled the opium trade. Long as they controlled the supply of it. If they control the supply of it, why legalize it? These guys are not running a new play, it's the same old play. 200 years old. There's absolutely nothing new about it. It's the exact same playbook that they used against the Chinese. You want to know why the war they used against the Chinese and the Irish? You want to know why? Because they know there's going to be a critical mass of people dumb enough to go for it. All this excuse making for being stupid, all this excuse making for being weak. What part does weakness have in black empowerment?
None.
What part does excuse making have in black empowerment?
None.
Oh, I know this may sound harsh. Apparently, you know, suffering under white supremacy. Apparently, that's
Not
so
harsh enough.
Tells me a lot about where some of y'all's minds are at if you think that my words are harsh. But when I say that we must be uncompromising, that's exactly what I mean.
That's what you
When I
got.
say that we must have a hard-nosed approach to our power, that's precisely what I mean. And while there have been some so-called legalization of marijuana in certain states, but you notice when it comes to black folks, it's still like black folks.
Yeah.
Notice that. Oh, we legalized in Colorado, but we're still like the black folks up there called having it.
They're smelling like it.
It's just not legal to have it.
Like you smell like weed. I don't give a fuck what I smell like. That don't give you reason to fuck with me.
Remember I told that female, I said, Steve, what do you think you're doing?
I'm just checking.
I don't even do that. Don't even. I don't have any weapons in my car, no guns, no knives, no nothing.
That's what scares white supremacy. They're like, wait a minute, Negro, what you doing? Getting all in both. You ain't scared of Bubba and fucking Pinker? Nope. So worst case scenario, I got Shaquana, Trayshawn, Lacaniqua, and fucking Trey. And for them knowing that they're beating your ass for a good reason, that maybe even that ancestors feel good about, yeah.
Black folks know.
supremacists and have
But
money
don't
and have never
buy
done
the
black
coupe.
folks even one damn favor that makes you think that they're sorry now. But here's the
What? We weren't able to call out proof before because, I mean, your generation, you couldn't tell who was coming.
still wouldn't be okay. And you see, that's something that
Even if you called them out, you had to have proof, and then they made you look like, oh, you wanted them crabs in the bucket. You just don't want to see a black person successful. It's like, no, I don't want to see a coon successful.
white supremacy is some sort of excuse.
That's 7,000 keep bringing up.
Rationalization for staying away from these vices.
Remember?
These things are
7,000.
bad in themselves. White supremacy never
What's that
existed.
7,000 down for the black lady?
Yourself getting high, just
Nothing?
surrendering
Not a damn
personal
thing.
sovereignty.
Not just nothing, not a damn
An
thing.
acceptable amount of your soul that you can afford to surrender to addiction, that still wouldn't make it right. White supremacy is not the only reason why it's wrong. If white supremacy never existed, it would still be
You're
wrong
wrong.
to be doing that mess.
No?
And white supremacy didn't exist.
Because a lot of black folks have gotten comfortable with the idea
No,
to make
yeah.
excuses for doing the
That's
wrong
them.
thing. When you have one of these vices that you've chosen to indulge, you can no longer talk about focus. Because focus doesn't leave room for dilution. Focus doesn't leave room for diversion. So that's what I've got to say when it comes to black folks and marijuana use. Black people are thinking that it's cute to be commercials and excuses for it, and it's not. I'll tell you right now, I have no problem if black people are going to be selling marijuana. If they legalize it, black folks should sell it. But I'll be damned if I'm going to be giving any sort of wink and a nod to black people using it. No, family. When it comes to this subject in particular, you can already tell the position I've staked out.
You don't smoke it.
Let the white
This nigga don't
supremacists
smoke,
and
this nigga don't
collaborators
drink.
lose their souls.
Nothing. He went to
If you're not already
Level-headed.
what you call it? He went to Dr. John Henry Clark. Dr. John Henry Clark. He said, I'm not just going to be here for black people. Man. I'm going to lead by example.
I have a face.
As well as share it on your social media.
It's like a
White
face.
supremacist.
Yeah, it doesn't like a
Now,
weird. It
that said,
looks like a face some kind of crazy.
gotta give credit to Tariq for helping to bring this to people's attention because this happens to be something very
A weird
important
face.
that as many people as possible in the black media need to be repeating this and making sure that everybody hears about this. As most of you have probably heard, New York Governor Angela Cuomo has been in the news in recent weeks, though not for anything good. First, it was about how he covered up the number of nursing home COVID deaths. And more recently, there's been a slew of white women coming out the woodwork
This is in New York.
accusing him of all manner of
Nursing
lecherous
home.
behavior. There was even a media dust-up after
Everyone else quit except for two
Governor
employees.
and his brother Chris
No,
Cuomo
And
that's
from
it.
two citizens dead.
testing last year,
Two in critical
advocacy and
condition.
personality began to experience symptoms.
And I'm working on
So Chris
nursing
Cuomo
home.
was shucking and jiving with his brother on air. Those two clearly, we're going to go ahead and use this as an opportunity to get some publicity for Governor Cuomo, just in case that lunkheaded
Why you
moron
up there?
decides that he wants to make a presidential run.
Huh?
All the while, Chris Cuomo.
You see how my circle is yellow?
Yeah.
I'm searching for like the treasure.
Decided, well, it's on a need-to-know basis. You don't need to know. And keep in mind, as Jason Black pointed out when he took out a billboard in New York City, Governor Cuomo has not moved a muscle to make racial profiling a crime in his state. However, he did chime in when his Attorney General, Letitia James, declared that New York State would vigorously go after and prosecute any crimes against Asians, something that this black woman, who's the Attorney General, never did
For black people.
And it was Letitia James' little announcement that opened the signal for the white media that this was going to be the beginning of a pushing back against black people protesting anti-black violence by the state and by private citizens. So you see, last month was pretty rough for old Governor Cuomo, but apparently not rough enough because the beginning of this month, Cuomo's office announced that New York State would be setting up a $2 billion
Not no more.
and who
Y'all dropping a dime.
You saw one where Jason John Tucker went out there and talked to the Trumpies, and they were like, yeah, he lied to us for real, goddamn. He fucking lied to us, goddamn. Like, old white dude. That was like a hardcore Trumpy, and he was like, I can't believe that some bitch lied to me like that. It's like, dumbass.
You voted for him. You put his ass in there.
Hard as hell to rule the Latino vote because that's who this is aimed at. Latino culture is more amenable to right-wingers, as we see in their home countries, and since the Democrats have been seen as a party that claims to support black people, at least on paper, Latinos have been trying to make inroads with Republicans. The Democrats are launching an all-hands-on-deck offensive to attract as many non-black voters as possible, particularly Latinos and casual racist white moderates, who both the Republicans and Democrats these days are calling Biden Republicans. This is what's going on right now, just a few months after the election. Biden hasn't even finished his first 100 days in office, and look what you see the Democrats doing. So it ain't just at the federal level where they're trying to solidify as many non-black votes as possible, so they can shore up the Democratic Party. You're not going to be able to have controlled opposition if the controlled opposition is coming. And on the other hand, you've also got the states deciding that at the state level, they're going to also be propping up this anti-black scheme. So the Democrats have decided they need a new voter base. That voter base is going to be comprised of groups who have historically shown hostility towards us. And why the desperation? Why the rush? Because these guys are pushing this stuff through at warp speed. They're just being blatantly so why so desperation? Several groups of desperation. Why so scared? Committing billions of dollars to this effort in New York State alone. No matter what their rhetoric may be when it comes to black people, both political parties are carrying out the same policy of safeguarding and ensuring white supremacy. Because right now we put pressure on them. Black people are being killed in the streets. The state attorney general, Letitia James, is telling everybody her hands were tied. Any crime? What's that? There's no grounds. The legal barrier too high. The legal standards too high, you see. Asians claim that some black person had an argument with them. Letitia James declares she's going on a war against anti-Asian violence. Black people take out billboards demanding reparations. These clowns duck and dodge the issue. Illegal aliens tell the Dems that they might vote for them if they give them a check. And the Democrats immediately set aside billions for these illegal aliens. Folks, these white supremacists on the left can't make it any clearer who they are and what their plan is and has always been. And what about the so-called black leaders? Where are they when all this is going down? Shouldn't they be lodging some sort of complaint, or at the very least going, hey, what about us? They should be saying something, you would think, but they're saying nothing at all. You can't find them. Oh, the same morons who are cheerleading for these guys, now that they're looking at seeing $15,000 checks being cut, all of a sudden they're falling real quiet. Well, as usual, they happily allowed this anti-black scumbag Cuomo to use them as a backdrop for a photo op. I mean, these photos haven't aged very well in just a few weeks. Oh, they were skinning and grinning, standing beside Cuomo. Then Cuomo turns around and says, $15,000 each for illegal aliens. And Cuomo chose black voters to be for a reason. Because black voters are the most solidly Democratic, and because after last year it was clear that many black voters are still willing to vote for a Democratic candidate and expect nothing in return. This was Cuomo's way of pointing out to everyone, declaring, hey, a picture speaks 1,000 words. I got these niggers on lock. I got that black support sewn up. At least that's what he's hoping the picture is going to insinuate. Hey, I got that black support on lock. And no matter what the media might be saying today, I'm going to be fine come election day because black people are still with them. So the Republicans can forget about a recall election like they're attempting with Gavin Newsom, who doesn't have black support, mainly because he and Nancy Pelosi ethnically cleansed San Francisco of black residents, He was careful to stage manage his photo ops and to make certain that he only allowed black flunkies like the mayor of Houston or some pork chop preacher to be around him. Bootleg Negroes who would gladly kiss his behind for the chance to chase some clout. Soulless, unprincipled creeps like this are the only kind of black folks that Bloomberg wants around him. Bloomberg knew that running in New York City would be perilous for him. Black New Yorkers remember stop and frisk, and they're not about to forgive him for it. Bloomberg himself made all manner of anti-black remarks defending the harassment and even killings of black people at the hands of the thugs in blue. He only began to pipe down some of his race-baiting rhetoric when he was nearing the end of his term limit as mayor and began to seriously start thinking about running for higher office. That's when he decided that maybe he might want to keep some of his anti-black remarks to himself. Try to moderate his profile a little bit. So he figured when he made his lunkhead run for president, he would do his campaigning in the deep South. Because surely the black voters down there hadn't heard about his racist policies or his own personal racist behavior and comments. At least that's what he thought. Problem for him was that there was a black media on the march educating black people about his record. So when he slithered his way into Chapel AME Church in Selma and had that bootleg pulpit pimp preacher who allowed his church to be used as a backdrop for that racist photo op, there were black congregants who stood up and made it clear they weren't having it. They turned their backs on Bloomberg and the white media couldn't do nothing but take pictures. Yeah, he got photobombed, just not the way he would have liked. That killed Michael Bloomberg's presidential hopes right there. In fact, it probably killed whatever plans of a political future he might have hoped for. But the killing part was that the same white media who just a week or so earlier had been boldly bragging that stop and frisk hasn't hurt Bloomberg's black support at all. Black voters don't seem to really care about stop and frisk. Why, the white media says it, so it's from God's lips to our ear. I'm telling you, this is God's lips. You niggers don't care about stop and frisk. You really don't. That's what they were saying all the way up until that black congregation at Chapel AME Church turned their backs on Bloomberg. Then all of a sudden the white media quietly withdrew that asinine assertion. They weren't saying that mess anymore. But it just went to show that's their job. Their job is not to report black opinion. It is to dictate to us what they think black opinion should be. And to see how many Negroes will be able to go for it. You see, Governor Cuomo knows this. He knows all of this. He knows that he better stick to little gatherings where, no, there ain't gonna be no members of the public allowed in. It's just gonna be the same hand-picked Negroes that we always have, the usual suspects. He's not about to do what Bloomberg did and risk going in front of the black masses where he could get embarrassed. He needs to create the false impression
You're looking
that black
healthy
folks
right
love him,
now.
or at least he needs to be able to say, hey, here's some black folks who can hold down their lunch and hold their nose just long enough to take a picture with me. Just like with Ralph Northam of Virginia after his blackface scandal, and just like Joe Biden when the 94 crime bill was dragging down his presidential campaign, Cuomo surrounded himself with a few hand-picked subservient, servile Negroes, media-approved bootlegs who the Democrats have on the take, who depend on the white left for every crumb of their daily bread and will do anything just to have their picture taken with some prominent white celebrity. But now, just a couple of weeks after these lapdogs lent their melanin to his publicity stunt, because that's the reason why they're there. We need some dark-skinned folk to stand next to this racist acid doing acid. How does Cuomo repay his loyal bootlegs? Does he put money into black businesses? Hell, does he even put any money into the bootlegs' pockets? Does he set aside money for black people who have been the hardest hit by the economic consequences of the lockdown? No. Instead, Cuomo gives money to illegal aliens who don't even have the ability to vote for him. This is from the governor of New York, which is where the big networks are all headquartered, so they, of course, would cover whatever self-serving publicity stuff that he did. This was meant to send a political message, one that would be a signal event to the other Democratic enclaves across the country. New York was announcing to everyone to see them tell black people, hey, there's nothing we can do when you niggers are murdered. While at the same time telling Asians, hey, we'll go to the mat for you guys. And there was a black attorney general who said that. York State to begin with? There's so like massive numbers of them. Since at least 3 of the major networks are headquartered in New York, and because one of the biggest papers in the country is also headquartered there, you better believe whenever New York does something politically, the rest of the country is going to hear about it. And that's deliberate. They want to make sure people know, hey, here's a bellwether event, singing the signal out loud and clear. This is the direction we're supposed to be going in, folks. That's the job that the white media serves, to confuse and hopefully undermine the masses through disinformation, but also to send out the signal to everybody, hey, here's the agenda we need to get on code for. These little stunts the New York State has been doing, deciding they would ignore black people, but they were going to prioritize hate crimes against everybody else. In fact, stuff that's just minor things that aren't even hate crimes at all. Well, we're going to show that anything that happens to a group that we're looking out for is going to be prosecuted as a hate crime. Black people, it doesn't matter if you got some member of the KKK guns you down while screaming nigger, nigger, that says I've been planning to kill a black person for the last 50 years. That's not a hate crime, but there's always going to be some excuse. That lets you know there's a lot of black folks who the Democrats have on the take who are so devoted, so slavishly enthralled to, and just getting in the behind to serve the interests of white supremacy that they will gladly tell black folks, we're going to let everybody take shots at you and kill you, and we're going to make sure that black people have absolutely no place that they can expect their rights to be respected, and that everybody's just going to be taking pot shots at you, and we're going to help them do it. Letitia James is not some innocent bystander or some befuddled, incompetent civil servant. She is a willing and eager participant and collaborator with white supremacy. She is as much an anti-black racist as an Andrew Cuomo or a Daniel Ventolio. No, these guys have never done anything to help black people. Nobody declaring that if you harm a black person, that's going to be treated as a hate crime. If a black person says you looked at him funny, that's going to be a hate crime. Hey, black folks have been the hardest hit as a result of the COVID lockdowns. Well, here's a $15,000 check. No, they don't do that for black people. They make it very clear. This is not going to be about black people. That is meant to let everybody be put on notice. There's an audience they're trying to reach, a national audience. This isn't about a handful of illegal aliens in New York State. This is about setting a bellwether event to let everybody else know, hey, yoo-hoo, here's the direction that we're going in. Last year it was, well, there are people more important than black folks, you know. Why are we focusing on these black people's complaints? We ought to be focusing on what everybody else is whining about instead. And this year it's, hey, we're going to cut a check, but it's going to be for everybody else. And then we tell black people, what can we do? There's no money. There's going to be these black bullets who, well, what can they do with no money? And neither Biden nor any other Democrat is advocating that Congress should copy New York's example for black people. Where's your Congressional Black Caucus at? Where are your black so-called intellectuals at? Where are the clowns who were cheerleading for Biden last year? If a single state could set aside billions on a whim to give free checks to illegals just because, then the federal government could start sending out hundreds of billions in checks to us. Because unlike the illegal aliens, A, we're citizens, B, we're actually owed the money. But a lot of black folks who live in the permanent land of apathy and denial, they are looking for any reason that they can not to have to fight white supremacy, not to have to challenge white supremacy, because once you start stepping up about a check, it becomes a matter of sooner or later, I gotta get in your face about it. And there are black folks who are like, I'd rather go back to Xbox or watching reruns of The Real Housewives, who gives a damn? There's a lot of black folks who would much rather just change the channel. Challenge white supremacy, they're not about to. Don't let some idiot tell you that the money isn't there. All those morons who spent the last few years and the last 24 months of time telling us, y'all say you cut the check, brother, the states is broke, brother, they ain't got no money. Yeah, well, New York State certainly seems to have found billions of dollars for illegal aliens, people who aren't even citizens. They seem to have found the money very quickly. Gee, whatever happened to there was going to be partisanship? You notice how bipartisanship has come to the New York State government all of a sudden? Whatever happened to political gridlock? And the scumbags, the liars, these little meat puppets for white supremacy who are lying and saying, ain't no way we go, brother, y'all can't be hitting them up for no money. We gotta get Biden in office first before we can make any demands. Notice how they're dignity demands now. You're seeing other people get cut checks, and yet they're laying low. They're hiding. Biden has been in office for about 83 days now. He hasn't even reached the 100-day mark yet. But look at what New York State Hillary Clinton's former stomping grounds just did. And, I mentioned that because when Hillary was running for the Senate, she and Bill made it a point to let everybody know that Bill Clinton was moving to Harlem. Hillary only won that Senate seat election in 2001 with 55% of the vote. That's it. 5 percentage points. Former First Lady, you've got Bill Clinton who carried the Senate in New York, and all his wife could get was a mere 55% of the vote. Yeah, they knew that they needed to do something to shore up her black support. If she was going to position herself for a presidential run, which both of them and everybody else in the country knew that she was angling for, then she was going to need to demonstrate that she could steamroll her opponents at the polls. 5% margin of victory? Former president's wife? When he carried the state of New York, that wouldn't be good enough. Hell, with numbers that sorry, you wind up like Al Gore losing your own state. So after Bill made his big media splash by moving to Harlem, quote unquote, he claimed he would try to spur economic investment in the area. Of course, as we all know, the only thing that really happened was more angry white people moved into Harlem. And Harlem's been dying a slow, agonizing death by gentrification. A whole bunch of angry white people who've shown nothing but disrespect for the black folks who made Harlem. By the way, Bill Clinton stayed until recently. A lot of Harlem's black residents, however, did not. So all those black people who told us what a great idea it was to vote for Biden because he was going to do all this stuff for black people, where the hell are they at now? All you clowns who made it a point to whine at the black media on Twitter. South man, no check, man, ain't no money. States ain't got no money. Government broke, man. They broke, man. Thinking you were smart. That's what these white liberals told you to say. Oh, there's no money, you see. No money. No money for you. You morons who called into Jason Attorney's broadcast to lecture the black media about how Kamala Harris's victims deserve to go to jail because they were all guilty, right? And how Biden would be too scared to defy the black vote because of the uprisings last summer. He wouldn't dare defy the black vote. He knows the black vote if he tries that. All of you morons say now you've been quiet for a few months. Now you've been laying real low. New York's giving illegal aliens $15,000, and Biden is giving black people the silent treatment. Well, that is when he's lecturing us about how we need to recruit Hispanics. Sure, because that's who they're going to be funneling resources to. The same way the middle class was invented out of whole cloth by massive federal economic giveaways. Now we see the Democrats in the process of engineering the exact same thing for the Hispanic community with massive federal and state giveaways. White supremacy needs people who will be loyal to it. You can grumble about white supremacy just so long as you're not going to overthrow it. As long as you're not actually trying to overthrow white supremacy, that's fine. As long as you toe the line and obey what white supremacy wants you to do, you ain't gotta like it. You don't have to deal with the smart swats and dance on your feet just so long as you do it. Because the Americans are so really mad because there's this grassroots movement to stand up and to move forward. You got these so-called minorities here, whether they be immigrants want that past to come back. We don't want to imply that it never went anywhere, because that would be to indict the dominant society, and well, we gotta be careful of that. Wouldn't want to endanger our model minority status after all. But as soon as white supremacy finishes reminding these groups of what their place in the racial hierarchy is, they go right back to dumping on us. See, our problem is that we have a lot of bootlicks and clowns who keep trying to prop up the lie of the black-brown or black-Asian or black-white left alliance. These are chumps hoping for some interracial sex, or maybe to get some money from one of these groups, but usually they'll settle for the interracial sex. That's usually their main motivation. There are more than a few Negroes who would gladly throw us all under the bus or into a friendship or
you're gonna regret that.
They still keep at it. Why? Because there's no cure for stupid, and being a bootleg is about as intense as it is. And no, black media is not going to stop harping on this. These Democrats and Republicans say ain't no money for children. Here's the money. Contrary to some fools try to tell themselves white supremacy is sophisticated. There's also sophisticated means to do it. Narcissism oppression that has endured for half a millennium and come to understand that it can do so without sophistication. This isn't the time for face-saving lies like some fools try to do. That kind of magical thinking is exactly what so many comics of we told you that he would mention black people one time on an operation day, and after that he never mentioned us again, and that's exactly what he did. I don't think the Paul's little stuff's gonna stay contained to New York. Except for California to follow suit. Don't be surprised if one or two red states do the same before it's all over. This is not merely about New York State. Democratic states will be serious about the celebration of national policy. Red states don't have to be told, oh, sure, things don't need to be prodded that, hey, we can make it clear that we're affiliated. These are black groups who are affiliated. Steam on that one. We'll speed the process on that one. We got a time constraint on the news to start agitating heavy, and we gotta get this done as quickly as possible. The race is on to see if they can take us under before black folks because the 2020 election is basically, for a lot of black folks, it's going to be the last time that they get to say, claim otherwise that, oh well, Trump was scary, that man on Trump, we couldn't really, that was scary, he was dangerous. Now they won't be able to hide behind that excuse anymore. After this, the states are indeed incubators for policy, but they also copy one another's laws as well. All these states are run by white supremacists, no matter what they claim their political affiliation to be. They are all on team white supremacy. They are all operating out of the same playbook and for the same purpose. They have the luxury of denying reality. You don't. You can't afford to pretend that the situation isn't as bad as it clearly is. You don't have the luxury of clinging to fairy tales and lies, though that hasn't stopped some of us from trying. When you mindlessly support people that demand nothing in return, you're telling everyone that you're a sucker. They will use you, and why not? Familiarity breeds contempt, and white supremacy has had 500 years to get real familiar with black people. It's like I taught you, when you run around saying yes to everyone, then when you're teaching them to take you for granted, they know exactly what to expect from you before they even tell you to do something, because they're so familiar with you. On the other hand, if you want respect, then you better start learning to say no. That way people will realize they don't know what you're going to do. They can't really be familiar with someone they're going to understand you are to be taken seriously. So yes, the black media called it. Not that it took any brains to figure it out. Of course, the Democrats are trying to shore up and solidify a non-black voter base. Of course, they're going all out for this. They realize the black media has not stopped informing our people and not stopped making it clear there's going to be tangibles before you get this black vote. And then every day more black people are realizing that their support for Biden was a fool's errand. They played themselves. They were played for fools. They let themselves get caught up in their feelings, mostly fear, regarding Trump, when the reality is that having a white-friendly racist in the White House actually gave our demands leverage, because nobody could deny that we were right. When we said, hey, this is a white supremacist country, look how they're treating black people, and this is the reason why all of our demands are valid and justified, and we should have. The whole world's looking and saying, well, we can't really say that the niggers are being targeted. But now the white media can pretend that Biden is the good guy and America sends. Well, they're being atoned for. How so? Well, they just gave $15,000 to illegal aliens. Those aren't the black people being killed. Those are people from south of the border. Well, Joe Biden has made it clear that he's not going to be calling African countries S-hole countries anymore. So see, that's different. That's better. See, things are getting back to normal. We're going back to the way things were before Trump. Well, before Trump, you had Trayvon Martin being murdered. You had Eric Garner being strangled. You had Walter Scott being shot in the back 8 times. You had Ayanna Jones being killed, a child. You had all this carnage going on long before Donald Trump. You didn't have to wait for Trump to get the White House before black folks were being killed with impunity. But the white media's putting forward the lie, and now you got a lot of folks who are going to be going, well, that's all behind us now. That's what happens when you allow them to pull this game. Sure, it's a con, but the thing is they feel it's one that they can get away with if we let them. The reality is that wrinkled up racist Biden, he's just a very slightly more sanitized version of the same white supremacist Trump. And that's a distinction, not a difference. But what black folks allowed to happen was for the left arm of white supremacists not to be broken, so they had to buy themselves some time. That's what the game has been for the last 150 years. One stalling tactic after the next to kill, threaten, coerce, cajole, give us fake sympathy, whatever it takes to get black people to be too afraid or confused or accountable or not to take on white supremacy. They're scared of their guns and dogs attacking you. And when fear subsides, you're scared of them not giving you a job. And after that, you're scared that they won't want to be your friend, which actually means you're scared there won't be interracial sexual access for you. When black people talk about nonsense about being colorblind, that kumbaya stuff, what they're really talking about is interracial sexual access. Well, you're going to have to wake up to reality, like it or not. As one insult against us after the next piles on, more black people will finally give up on denying the reality, and black voter anger will once again be directed, this time at Joe Biden. When that happens, the temporary stay that the Dems managed to get in 2020 will be over. It's going to be a judgment day. It's going to be black people pointing out, hey, you not only did not do anything for us, you prioritized all these other groups, and they're not the foundation of the party. They're not the base of the Democratic Party. We see what you tried to do, and now it's judgment day. But understand, lying and making excuses for white supremacy, that's not some victimless crime. As long as we continue to play nice white supremacy and pretend as if they're our friends, then we're allowing white supremacy to live to oppress us another day. On the other hand, if we finally had enough and we're sick of letting white supremacy buy itself more time at our expense, then it's time to rise up and be uncompromising about it. This is why what we do is so important. A culture has to come from within, and for far too long we've allowed the white media and their black bootleg paid-off clowns who are in the employ of this or that white institution to dictate to us who we are, allegedly, and what our icons ought to be. That's why I did that video tell you, hey, I'm in the middle of a scandal right now. To save my political bacon, I need some Negroes to hide behind. Oh, thank you for that photo op. Now here's a $15,000 check for illegal aliens. I want to make sure everybody remembers that. So when these jackasses start rearing their heads in time for next year's midterm elections, we can remind everybody, what did the Democrats do for us? The Democrats were all pretending like they were concerned about black folks. No, your concern for me is shown by putting something in my hand that I can take to the bank, because that's what you did for the illegal aliens. That's what you did for the Asians. That's what you're going to do for us. And now we see a Greek River City of 1960. Here is an American city replanted around a highly developed modern traffic system. On all express city thoroughfares, rights of way have been circumvented as to displace unwanted business sections and undesirable slum areas whenever possible. Yesterday on Twitter, there was a big dust-up because former presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg had observed with his common sense in America that racism is ingrained even into some of the highways in the country. Now, of course, you have the right-wing nuts doing their usual devil's advocate. Anything you say, we have to take the contrary opinion and say, well, this is a parody, right? Well, as far as they were concerned, that was just too far-fetched. Of course, what happened was you had an avalanche of people who educated these dim bulbs on what they know clearly critical and basic literacy is no friend of the right. Because if the fire-ready AIM crowd had bothered to actually do a live study, they would have known that Robert Moses, whose names are declared American history, himself was notorious for how he structured the highways and byways of New York and gave a model to other states for how to use infrastructure as a means to corral and otherwise control black enclaves. This way he didn't need to send roving gangs of white supremacist marauders to burn down Rosewood. You just use eminent domain and claim we're going to build a highway where you niggers are living and anywhere else you happen to move to. Robert Moses was the patron saint of weaponizing infrastructure against black people. That's what he did when he was in New York. People started going ahead and chronicling this stuff. Now, the main thing happens to be, how come black people have been mistreated 15 ways from Sunday? Why is it that New York State hasn't made amends to these black folks? Yeah, the marginalization of black people, it doesn't just stop at redlining. You had the cities and the states who were arranging themselves and building the very masonry in a way that was meant to shut black people out. The weaponization of infrastructure ain't nothing new about it at all. You just got through hearing a little clip about how that works. That's how the highway systems were designed. They were designed as a way to go ahead and tear down so-called slums. We're going to displace these slums. Well, the thing is, you can't displace a slum because a slum doesn't get up and go anywhere. You can, however, displace the people who live in these areas that have been deliberately targeted for economic deprivation and impoverishment, which of course is exactly what happened. Slums don't move. People are the ones who get displaced, not slums. And of course, who is it who decides what a slum is in the first place? Oh yes, the same white supremacists who are down at the city planning board deciding what black neighborhoods they're going to have steamrolled. These same white supremacists who were the ones who economically impoverished the black areas in the first place, they're the ones who also turn around and go, well, these places are blighted. It's a matter of black people's neighborhoods highways. They don't build walls. And yet, why did this guy, he was big, and he was alone with these highway projects, also trying to get their bid in. So why was this guy just taking him as a case study? Why is the guy who builds highways, why is he the Asian building walls? Should he be the main one looking to go, boy, hell, if you want to build a road into Mexico or out of Mexico, I'm your guy. But if you're trying to keep people from building walls, I so even he should have gone, man, I need a weird fit for a project like this. Except he didn't think that he would. I'm your guy. I'm the one you need to be talking to. Now, why is that? It's because of the legacy of Robert Moses.
Let's go get him. Come on.
A good example would be the Damn Expressway in Chicago. It separates the White Enclave of Bridgeport from the black folks who are on the east side of it. You also have others like LBJ in Dallas. I mean, that thing's got so many doggone walls and barriers and such. I'm sitting here going, man, I think Dallas must have half the concrete on the planet poured to their little highways there. And these things are several
Get ready
lanes
to die,
across.
you son of
And
a
it's not
bitch.
just one continuous highway, but it's not flat. It's got drop-offs, big old walls, and it's like, god dang, how does anybody get over that? That's the point. The guys who have been building the highways were built and originally designed by Robert
What the hell's wrong with you?
racial barrier, racial walls meant to keep black folks out, meant to keep black folks contained. So that's the reason why you got people who normally would be building highways who are looking at going, hey, if you're trying to keep these non-white people out of the country and you need a barrier to do it, call us. That's what we do because that's what the highways have been doing. That's been their primary purpose. Their secondary purpose is as a means for your car to get from point A to point B. But the primary purpose is to carve up the city to keep certain folks, black folks, contained. Malcolm said it, and it's still as true as it's ever been. Everything in this society under white supremacy is meant to oppress you. Everything in this society is used as a weapon against you. Even the very damn highways. White supremacy is so sick, so vile, so corrupt, so intolerable to decent people. They are so hostile, so violent and aggressive. They take roads and turn roads into weapons of racism. Look, this is not about trying to win some sort of pseudo-academic argument. There is no argument to be had. This is about black people understanding that when these people are talking about highway projects, when they're talking about these sort of projects, everything is being weaponized against you. Everything. They didn't weaponize the highways against Asians or Hispanics or against religious minorities. They didn't do it against the Jews or the Presbyterians or the Moonies or whoever. They did it specifically against black people. And that being the case, you don't ever let these bastards get away with trying to narrow the discussion only to redlining. It's like, oh, well, it was a few banks that did it. Marginalization of black people, they're mostly redlining. See, they're willing to talk about redlining because they can't ignore it. They don't have the ability to pretend as if that's not part of the discussion because we're forced it to be. But then when you point out, no, it's not just what the banks were doing, it's what the cities did themselves, and they did it specifically for the purpose of attempting to cage and hem in black people, to contain black people and to Eventually, when this becomes clear to you, you tell the people behind the poker game that you're going to play for yourself from now on. Thank you very much. But they ignore this declaration. They pretend as if you didn't say anything. And when you insist, when you tell them I'm playing, or there's no questions about it, they attack you for having suggested that you ought to play for yourself. I've always told you that if you want to control people, then you can come in with brute force, you can do it that way. You can declare yourself the ruler, and you can use brute force to maintain your position, but the problem with using brute force alone is that people can clearly recognize what you're doing as brutal oppression, and they're going to revolt against you, because it's obvious regime that have family people under their thumb. This is one of the techniques that you use. You go ahead and speak to the real condition of people that you've oppressed. You don't deny it. You go ahead and say, yes, it is what it is. And there's a reason for that. Every system of repression relies on this triage. Know when they're being oppressed, so it's stupid to deny it. Instead, you acknowledge it, and you tell them that you're working on it. So what happens is they sit back waiting for you to discover religion. You're the freaking oppressor. You have absolutely no incentive whatsoever to tear down the very thing that's giving you all of these guarantees, goodies, and giveaways. The Roman system of tyranny endured for over 1,000 years using this exact same method. And the British did the same thing. You think that the British... If you're not already subscribed to this YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button now, along with the bell icon, so you can be notified whenever a new video is posted. And if you're already subscribed, check and make sure that YouTube hasn't unsubscribed you. And of course, be sure to give the video a like, as well as share it on your social media. The white supremacist unit. Now, that's simple. White supremacy is based on a lie that is very delicately and precariously balanced. White supremacy requires that the lie be left completely alone. Any small thing could topple it. We are threatening that delicate balance, and it's not by accident. We're doing this deliberately. We understand that white supremacy is a satanic covenant between the white elite and the dominant society, which includes a number of non-white entities. This covenant is based on a system of goodies, giveaways, and guarantees for those classified as white. But it's also predicated on the idea that the people who are oppressed do not threaten this system. Now, how do you get a group of people to actually be keyed in for oppression for the long haul? Well, you've got to make it where these people are going to be reluctant, if not outright opposed, to toppling the very system that oppresses them. There's only one way to topple any system of oppression, and that is forcefully. You cannot bring down a system of evil nicely. You're not going to have it done quietly. There's not going to be a peaceful transition from oppression to justice. You have to make some noise and a mess. You're going to have to make the system unworkable to the point where people have to understand the only way there's going to have to be peace and quiet is when there is first justice. And that is what brings us to the current fight for black empowerment that's now heated up. Recently, the rapper Ice Cube has been making a lot of people happy because he has simply said the common sense facts when it comes to politics, which happens to be we are not going to be politically monogamous. There is no way in the world that the Jews would have what they have by being politically monogamous. AIPAC demands the obedience of both political parties. But with black people, on the other hand, we're supposed to be frozen in place like a potted plant, waiting to see what the Democrats do. And, well, we gotta wait for them, and if they say they can't do it, well, that's all there is. And Ice Cube say, no, as black people, we happen to be a group. And groups don't have friends. Groups have interests. And we have every right to promote those interests, no matter who doesn't like it. Well, enter the black cable bootlicks. Their job is supposed to be the black faces spouting the white lies. So you can't get a whole bunch of the white newscasters and cable personalities out there trash Ice Cube, which is what they really want. So instead, you get some black ones to do it. But they're stuck on the horns of a dilemma because these guys have largely invalidated themselves. You, of course, have had the usual suspects, the roly-poly Martins and such, but it was only a matter of time before this weekend arrived, and Joy Reid's little side show, her little feculent sewer over there on MSNBC, decided to take some pot shots. And it was the usual gallery of rogues, the same Negroes who are utterly dependent on the white media Chief. Now they're not going to do anything. Well, now they have on another handful of nobodies
thanks,
who are not
stranger.
accomplishing anything.
Why are
But
you
that's the
doing
whole
that?
point. These are the reliable Negroes who white supremacy's got on the dole.
She is
And they can be
alive.
relied on to
Oh,
say
thank
whatever
God.
it is
Am I
that black
glad to
power
see you?
needs them to say at the moment. The vast majority of black people are political pragmatists. They agree with Ice Cube. They support him. They're cheering him, especially the black grassroots. The young black people, they're with him. But you know who's not? The black boomlets who depend on white supremacy for every crumb of their daily bread. So you see, BSNBC ran a segment saying Ice Cube's come under fire for contributing to Trump. When they claim he's coming under fire, they're the ones who he's coming under fire from. He's certainly not coming under fire from the majority of black people. Black voters like Trump are with him, especially the young black voters. So what you have black police, the fraternity sorority deadbeats. You've got these undead, these boomers who are desperately pining for a white job, trying to see if they can convince us that they're insignificant, painful wonders somehow represents what black people are controlling. This is just a bunch of dependents of white supremacy. So we're trying to figure out how to do their master's bidding and make it seem like they've got more support than just a handful of thwarted talking heads on cable TVs. Just a handful of two puppets who sit around telling each other how great thou art. These are the ones who are taking aim at Ice Cube, but of course they're over here in zip gun trying to sink an aircraft carrier, and it just ain't working. Now the first person we had on was somebody named Jamil Smith. He's one of these nobodies who nobody's ever heard of. One of these unreliable Negroes who sow disorder. And the entire tone and tenor of this was going to be the spin on Ice Cube. Our was going to be just attacking him. Now they don't disprove anything that he says. They just discredit him. Just say, well, you know, you need to write all Bibles. Church told Jesus nothing more than an unabashed open attack on Ice Cube to bring black interests first. Ice Cube didn't say no GOP, he didn't say no. What he said is that our vote is our percent when it goes to the highest bidder. And we got these clown seniors and Republicans ain't looking to put us on the payroll, so we can stick with these Democrats and over here give us a job if we keep the Negroes corralled. So let's hear what this Jamil Smith character had to say as part of his opening salvo against Ice Cube. alert executive order. And what that did was that's supposed to be let the police know this is supposed to get those police union votes. That was a Democrat who did that. And the Republicans were doing similar measures at the state level, but the point is the Democrats were not signing laws meant to punish the police for harming black people. Instead, they were signing laws that were meant to make it clear that the police were going to give them How is that any different than what the Republicans were doing? How is that any different than what George Bush did? How is that any different than what every other Republican was proposing? Where's the difference here? I'm waiting for someone to tell me where Ice Cube was wrong. If we're going to argue against his positions, you need to tell me where he was wrong. And yes, when you have had 150 plus years of both political parties using and abusing black people, and one in particular who has put an enormous amount of propaganda into the lie that somehow they are for us, when they've done
Fine-looking animal you
for us in the last 50 years, been doing nothing but undermining and attacking us and leaving us out to dry. Yeah, at that point, you got some fence bending to do. You got to earn this book.
Well, this sure wasn't how I thought the day was going to turn out.
So
Aunt Maggie. I don't believe it. I mean, part of me always held some hope, and there'd been rumors. But that's why they decided to move me to Jessica. Figured if she was alive, it might be the one thing to draw her in. Guess they were right. Problem is, they always did underestimate Aunt Maggie. Tough don't even begin to describe her. But, hey, you probably know this already. She controlled the moonshine business in Lemoyne for years. Till the government sent in that bastard Reed Hickson. Most ruthless feller I ever crossed paths with. Doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, doesn't curse, but he is pure evil. The other revenues we could handle, but once Hickson was after us, we just couldn't get off the back foot. Kept moving from place to place, but it was only a matter of time before he caught up with us at one of the cookhouses.
First, they gotta prove how effective they are at getting black people to sit on our hands and do as we're told and get nothing in return.
Still makes me shiver just remembering it. They trussed her up, blew up the still, and threw her inside there to fry. I couldn't do nothing but watch as they held me back. The flames just kept getting higher. The whole place started caving in. I swear, it's the only time I ever seen Hickson smile. Burning a woman alive. Probably got a medal for it, too. Last thing I see is her dragging me away. Danny Lee, hiding in the trees, just looking on. In jail, I heard they tried for months to hunt him down. He must have found some protection.
This guy
He did have a knack of slithering his way into holes.
They all agreed on, but they got straight before the broadcast even began. Make sure to tell black people, don't expect anything from the Democrats. Don't ask anything. Don't put any pressure on the Democrats. Do not pressure them to do anything for black people. Stop pressuring them. That's the talking point. That's the directive that they were given. Tell black people to stop pressuring the Democrats. So what he does is he uses an asinine straw man, and he's not even doing a good job of it. So his straw man lie is, well, we've only got 20 days to the election. Biden can't propose any legislation. You heard what he said. He said Biden can't propose legislation. Yes, he can. You can propose anything you want. Now, if he's talking about passing legislation, sure. Nobody expects Biden to pass legislation right this very moment. Certainly not with the Democrats only in control of the House and not the Senate. But this is the entire point that Ice Cube's making. See, Donald Trump
I can't believe it.
Why don't die so easy?
I didn't know if you...
I know. But we're here now.
What is Joe Biden proposing for black people? He ain't proposing anything. If Democrats want us to handle the White House and the Senate,
you okay?
they will have to make
Marcel,
concrete proposals.
what are you doing here?
Lots changed, Glenn.
Can I get you some soup? Perhaps something stronger, huh?
Marcel, put him in my room for now.
But of course. Come on then.
Miss this old place.
Get some sleep. We got a lot of catching up to do.
He can propose legislation, but this guy's saying is don't tell him to propose
Dope
anything.
sometimes, but he is all I got. Go down and grab yourself a drink.
All of those white
Make sure you get an extra cut out of my side of the business. You earned it.
What are you waiting for? The rest you can remove yourself.
8 o'clock.
Because that's the goal. The goal is for the Democrats to put together a new voter coalition that doesn't include all of these demanding black people, all these black people who are making demands, all these uppity Negroes. Oh, you're going to hear that later on in the broadcast. You're going to be one guy who openly admits that Joe Biden has put together a coalition that can get him to the White House without black men voting for him. And this guy's saying with pride. You're going to hear that in a moment. These guys are proud of the idea. These are black people proud of the idea that politically neutralized, that black people can be made politically irrelevant. The prospect of black people being politically and thoroughly irrelevant and neutralized, that's a threat to white supremacy. It's been neutralized. These clowns, they identify with white supremacy's goals, not with black empowerment. The show MSNBC puts on to tell lies. Oh, you can't expect anything from Joe Biden. He can't. Why? He can't even propose anything. But you see that this is what counts as black experts. The white media calls them black experts. Experts in what? Professional white supremacists butt kissing. Kissing the white media's behind. That's the only thing that they're experts at. We only tell this level of lies when you either think that black people are so dumb and politically naive and immature.
You've been away on some travels, yes?
I
have some ideas.
Folks have become so out of pocket, so out of control with their demands that you look and say, wow, screw it. We might as well just go ahead and lie big, because the situation can't get any worse for us. And I think, frankly, I thought his approach to Ice Cube, as Ice Cube described it to me, seemed to make sense. He said he agreed with 85% of the plan and said he would address the plan after he's elected, if he's elected. To me, that makes practical sense.
Now we allow it to mature,
on these objectives if I'm president. That, to me, says I'm not going to promise you what I can't deliver. Now, that's 3 lies for the price of 1. And notice how this Jamil Smith character comes up with the weasel words. First he says that Biden said that he would address the plan after the election. He ain't going to do anything before the election. No pledges, no promises. Don't hold me to nothing before the election. You just need to vote for me. I'm not going to promise you anything. I'm certainly not going to promise. We'll address it after the election. We will address it. Then later on in the exact same sentence, he says Biden says he would act on it.
I am yours, Steve Commander.
Biden has not said he's going to act on anything. I already covered this so-called plan for Black America in my last video, and it's the same old trick bag of initiatives for minorities, which means white women and non-black groups, and people of color, which means non-black groups. And this guy says that we should vote for a candidate who has made no concrete promises or pledges to us. He says that's practical. That's practical. That's practical. Practical, yeah, it's a recipe for nothing, which is exactly what we're getting. It's a recipe to get nothing. You reward a politician for the campaign promises that they make by putting them in office. You do not reward them for telling you what they can't do. Biden can't make any pledges. He can't make any proposals right now. He can't make no proposals. So what do you want to do? He can't make no proposals. Well, I can't reward him for not making any proposals. When you're a candidate, that's your job. Your job is to tell people, here's what I propose, what I'm going to do for you. And this Jamil Smith said, well, Biden can't make no proposals. You can't be holding him to nothing. That ain't practical. Stupid. That's how elections work. The candidate comes to you and you say, what do you propose for policy? And based on the strength of your proposal, I'll decide whether or not to support you in the election. That's how it works. This guy's saying, no, you just vote for him. You don't need to see no plans. You don't need to hear nothing. Just vote for him. Wait until after the election. That's practical. Wait until after the election. Well, that's what we as black voters are going to do for Biden then. So Jamil Smith, because I know you're a little narcissist on MSNBC, because nobody pays attention to you.
Give me a challenge.
I know that just like Jason Jackass Johnson does, you clowns scour the internet to see if anybody's talking about you. I'm going to talk about you like a dog. But here's something for you to know, Mr. Smith. Your proposal that black folks need to vote for Biden and wait till after the election to see what he does of what Biden says, claims that he's going to do for us. And you know what? We will address that voting thing, whether or not we're going to vote for him, we will address that after the election. Oh, you want us to vote for Biden? Well, we agree with 85% of what Biden claims he's going to do for us, but we will act on electing him. We will act on voting for him after the election. Come back to us after the election, and we'll tell you what we can actually do. Look, you can't ask us to do anything right now. I mean, it's not even voting day in a lot of the nation. It's not even time for early voting yet, so you can't actually ask us to vote for Biden at this point. Come back to us after the election, and then ask for our vote. Hey, we agree with 85%, which say, you see how that sounds. See, they're not saying that we should wait till after election day to address whether or not we'll vote for Biden. No, you got to do that now. to say lead the charge of black women also following suit. And both black men and black women are saying together, wait a minute here. We're not supposed to be doing some job program for the Democrats. You need to tell us what the hell we're going to get, what's in it for us. Well, you've already had that first guy, Jamil Smith, tell you, well, ain't nothing in it for you. Why? They don't owe you any promises. You just vote for them and see what happens after the election. Okay, I got a better idea. I'll stay home and let's see what happens after the election. But this Woodbury, you heard what he just said. Joe Biden's put together a voter coalition that can get him into the White House even without black men's support. But of course, what goes unsaid is the plan is if black women break bad, well, hopefully we'll have enough of those casual, racist, white moderate votes or white right of center votes that we can get to the White House regardless. And you don't see anyone saying, well, gee, if the Democrats are able to get into the White House by ignoring black people's concerns, well, gee, why should black people vote for a political party at all when this political party is clearly, openly pursuing a policy, a political strategy of making the black vote irrelevant? And, of course, you have to point out that, gee, the Democrats didn't want to make the black vote irrelevant or find a way to circumvent the black vote until black folks started putting their foot down and making concrete demands about tangibles. Now, all of a sudden, the Democrats are like, we need a new constituency. These niggers are broken bad on us. Nobody talks about that. They don't bring that up. See, this is supposed to be a show geared toward and aimed at black people. But look at how they talk. They talk like every anti-black white pundit that you ever heard. They have no problem at all with the idea that black people should be politically irrelevant. They have no problem with that at all. As far as they're concerned, their allegiance is to the greater glory of the white political bigwigs of the Democratic Party, because that's how they get their daily bread. That's who signs their paycheck. So as far as they're concerned, they've already put all their chips on team white supremacy. It doesn't matter if it's the left wing or the right wing of it, as long as you ain't with these niggers. This was supposed to be counting as the black experts who call themselves attacking Ice Cube. This is what they come up with. Not bothered at all by the Democrats coldly plotting how they are going to make black people politically irrelevant. That's a bombshell, but you wouldn't know by the way they reacted. They don't seem to have any concern about it at all, because they don't have any concern. These clowns have as much contempt for black people as the most dyed-in-the-wool racist Republican. So why am I supposed to be voting Democrat again? This guy's a Democratic pollster, this Woodbury character. And he just got through saying with his own mouth, Joe Biden's put together a coalition that doesn't rely on black voters. So that being the case, why are we talking about what Joe Biden's even going to be doing for black people? He clearly is trying to pursue a political strategy that makes it where he can ignore what black people think. If he can get to the White House without black people's support, why should he do anything? Why should he do anything for us if he can get there to the White House without us? And this is coming off of MSNBC, of all places. But he then adds to that they're never going to be able to get anything done without having the Senate. That they do need black votes for. But here's my question. You have to balance the taken with the given. If Joe Biden is pursuing a policy, the guy running for the highest office in the land is trying to figure out how he can do a political triangulation, a political bank shot that helps him to circumvent having to go to black people for anything, then are we supposed to be silly enough to believe that all those down-ballot candidates are not pursuing the exact same strategy? We know that the DNC leadership hands out the talking points and tells them, here's what you need to do. You want some DNC money, here's how you better go about things. We already know they do that. What, Joe Biden is trying to circumvent the black vote, but the rest of these down-ballot candidates are not? Get the hell out of here. Joe Biden is making it very clear that at the presidential level, they're going to be pursuing a non-black voter coalition. And what that means is at the local, county, and state level, okay, guys, it's time to start edging these niggers out. That's what's going on here. This is the complete and thorough marginalization of the black vote if they can swing it. And you've got these black talking heads on Joy Reid's little sideshow who are smiling and beaming and strutting and celebrating this. They think this is a good thing. I mean, Fox News couldn't have presented this crap any better. But of course, no BS jamboree would be complete without Jason Johnson throwing in his 2 cents. You know, if this clown is speaking, it must have been one hell of a stupid question. Well, here's the pearls of wisdom that he chose to drop. And keep in mind, this was nothing more, like the rest of them before, it was nothing more than a completely naked agendas and trying to get us on the wrong track and trying to make white noise, unintended. These clowns working for pennies on the dollar. All of these fakers, frauds, phonies, and fools. All of these suck-ups, sellouts, and simps. Like Jason Johnson, who have been telling black people that we had friends in places that we did not. So he scores no points with me for telling a doggone common sense truth. Of course, black people, not just black men, black people in general, are cynical about this whole damn thing, and rightly so. We're admitting to the reality of the situation that we're in instead of trying to live in denial. Denial that has been promulgated and promoted by the Jason Johnsons, and the Jamil Smiths, and the Tiffany Crosses, and the Joy Reids, and the rest of the white media's black flunkies, sellouts, and bootlicks. The question is, why is it that the Democrats have not been doing what they claim they would be doing and representing black people's interests? If black people were being represented by the Democrats, if the Democrats were doing anything at all, there wouldn't be much cynicism at all. But that question never comes up. That never becomes the point. Why would that not be the point of the discussion? Because the entire idea is to do a switcheroo, is to do a pivot. And it's when you listen to what Johnson says next, here comes the pivot. Now that he comes ahead and says something that he hopes you'll agree with. Yeah, he is. Oh, yeah, let me go ahead and say right off the bat that the black people, especially black men, are cynical. And there is reason for that because we have been used and abused by all these other groups. But you know what? That's not really important because... So listen up. Here comes the pivot. His goal is, if I can't get your vote, I want you to be cynical enough that you don't vote at all. And I'm going to make sure that happens by, making it harder to vote around the country. Family, I have said this time and time again, if there is one thing that black people have proven in both 2008 and 2012, if black folks really want to vote, I mean, if we for real, want to get to those polls, ain't a damn thing that the Proud Boys or Adam Waffen or the rest of these sawed-off white supremacist clowns can do to stop us. I mean, if we for real wanted to bums rush the polls, they wouldn't be able to stop us. So they're trying to tell a lie, a feel-good lie. Oh, black people are scared to go to the polls. No, black people are demoralized because of the fact that we've been on a freaking treadmill with a bunch of clowns like Jason Johnson and Jamil Smith and Joy Reid, a bunch of bought-off, paid-off shills for the Democrats who get their daily bread from carrying water for their white leftist masters, telling black folks, you need to go and vote, and don't make no demands. Don't be making no demands now. You can't be making no demands. That's the reason why black folks are not gung-ho to get to the polls. Donald Trump has not done anything to demoralize black voters from going to the polls because black folks didn't put any faith in him or the Republican Party. It's impossible for Trump to let us down or make us cynical because no black person's expecting anything from him. Jason Johnson's talking like a fool. But these are the kind of lies you got to engage in. This is mostly black shills talking to each other because the black grassroots, black folks in general, especially young black folks, they're listening to this stuff and going, nah, you guys are talking around the issue, and that's deliberate. They cannot afford to say, the Democrats did this. 3+ generations of the Democrats either ignoring black people or, in the case of Joe Biden, weaponizing the legislature against us and putting laws on the books meant to target us and covering for and patting the cops on the back for killing us and supporting police murders of black people. That's what has made it where black folks said, you know what, maybe we ain't rolling with these Democrats. Maybe we're not rolling with anybody because neither party has our interest at heart. He doesn't say that. Instead, he pivots from saying that black people are cynical to, well, Donald Trump's trying to play on that cynicism by trying to stop black people from voting. Get the hell out of here with that mess. Now, while it is true the Republicans certainly would like it if black folks didn't vote, the truth of the matter is they don't have any say in that. You ain't got enough Kyle Rittenhouses. You ain't got enough Proud Boys to be able to stop black folks from voting if we for real wanted to mix it up and wanted to make sure that we made certain that we got our way at the polls. If black folks really wanted to bums rush those polling places, wouldn't be a damn thing they could do to stop us. So you can stop it with the lies about that. This is the matter. This is how the black shills for the white left feel better about their failure to corral black folks. These are the lies that they tell their white political masters. Well, look, it was the Republicans. You see, the Republicans. It was the Republicans. Please don't stop bringing me AC, I need them speaking peace. But of course, the Democrats want to make a big issue out of COVID-19 because that's part of their strategy to try to wear down Trump's support. And that's all well and good, but you need to leave black folks out of it because you're not thinking about black folks when it comes to health care. But because of the fact that COVID-19, bringing that up every 5 seconds is part of the Democrats' PR strategy against Trump, Jason Johnson wants to go ahead and score some brownie points by shoehorning COVID-19 into the discussion. Not doing anything about COVID, which is killing black men at a rate higher than we died, during the Middle Passage. Really, Jason? Black men are dying at a higher rate right now than during the Middle Passage. Man, you're doing too much, Jason. Now you're doing a little bit too much. So apparently COVID-19 is killing black people at a faster rate than the Middle Passage did. So that over 150 million black folks who died, apparently Jason Johnson thinks that COVID-19 is on par with that. You see what kind of reaching they're doing? I mean, I'm surprised that his arms are still in their flabby little sockets with all this reaching that he's doing, and to try to link COVID-19 to chattel slavery. I mean, how doggone disrespectful must you be because he didn't link anything else to slavery? But it just goes to show, these are the kind of conversation these guys have when we're not looking. You can tell what's front of mind for him. So he's shoehorning COVID into portions of black life where it doesn't even have any relevance, but it just lets you know, when the cameras are off and he's talking to his white political masters, they're telling him, you gotta push that COVID line. You need to make sure that the COVID really hits hard, make sure it hits home for black people. That's our strategy. That's our major talking point, Jason. And he's sitting there going, absolutely, I'll make sure I'm gonna mention COVID more than they want to hear it. That's what he's doing here. So you can tell these are the kind of conversations he's had behind closed doors with his white leftist masters. This is what they've told him to get out there and say. Now, he's not talking about the rate of black people dying from police violence or white supremacist violence. He doesn't compare that to the Middle Passage. He would actually have an appropriate comparison then. You can analogize that to chattel slavery. You can certainly analogize that to the Middle Passage. He doesn't talk about that, so I guess he forgot about what the death rate was when
Power
black
on.
men died at the hands of the police. But if Jason Johnson is
You are now paired. Enjoy.
Really so hot and bothered about the numbers of black people, or especially black men, dying from COVID-19. Why does he bring up the doggone fact that with Barack Obama's health care plan, that still didn't help all that many black people, especially black men in particular? Black folks die from inadequate health care across the board at a rate far higher than everyone else. But he doesn't talk about health care in general. He talks about COVID-19 because that's the white Democrat talking point. I mean, if you're going to be trying to link healthcare disparity to chattel slavery, at least make sure that you choose the broadest possible segment that you can so you can help the most black people possible. But this ain't about helping black people. This is about Jason Johnson proving that he can help white Democrats gain and hold power.
And then on top of that, using these sort of false equivalencies to say that Joe Biden is just as bad as Donald Trump.
Ooh, false equivalencies to compare Biden to Trump. I wonder where I've heard that before. I feel like I've heard that in the last few minutes.
He is unfortunately equating the wrongs of both sides of the political equation.
Now you notice that narrative consistency of their talking points, that you cannot compare Joe Biden to Donald Trump. Well, if you decide that you're not going to mention all the dirt that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have done, but of course if you do that, that will be a lie, which of course is exactly what Jason Johnson does next.
Donald Trump, who in the 1970s was discriminating against people.
Notice how he doesn't say black people, he just says people. He says Donald Trump was discriminating against people. First of all, Trump was sued for housing discrimination in the 70s against black people. It was housing discrimination. Jason Johnson couldn't even figure out what the hell his talking points are. That's the height of intellectual laziness, which is what part of what you have to do to be one of these black bootlicks. Donald Trump and his father excluded black people from living in their properties. And that's right, because Trump and his father are racist. And at the same time that Donald Trump was fighting to make sure that black people could not live in any real estate properties that he owned, Joe Biden, who was a senator at the time, was arguing in the Senate that black children should not be bused into schools where white children were at. So Donald Trump didn't want black folks living in his properties, and Senator Joe Biden, at the exact same point in the 70s, didn't want black children going to his children's schools. But Jason Johnson leaves out the part about Joe Biden. He can mention Donald Trump's racism, but if you're going to make the phony, false, lying argument that you can't compare Biden to Trump, well, you got to leave out all the dirt that Biden did. So that's what he starts off with. This is called lying by omission, but it gets worse.
Donald Trump, who in the 1980s was saying the exonerated five should be executed.
Now again, this is where a little specificity doesn't hurt. Trump took out an ad in the New York Times, full-page ad, saying that the Central Park Five should get the death penalty. And to this day, Trump has never truly apologized for it. He certainly has not apologized to those innocent black men who he called for to be executed for a crime they never even committed. But what Jason Johnson deliberately leaves out is that in the 1980s, while Trump was taking out those false ads to punish innocent black men, Joe Biden was busy in the Senate co-sponsoring numbers of draconian federal laws aimed at targeting black men too, such as the 1986 Anti-Drug Abuse Act. That was the law that created the 100-to-1 sentencing disparity between rock and powdered cocaine. And only a few years after Donald Trump's lying ad in the New York Times, Joe Biden wrote the '94 crime bill, which gave the states $13 billion if they would change their laws and make them as harsh as possible, as harsh as Joe Biden wanted them to be, and go after black people, especially black men. That's what Joe Biden was doing at the same time that Donald Trump was persecuting the Central Park Five. But you notice how Jason Johnson doesn't mention that. To this day, Joe Biden refuses to take any responsibility for the part that he played in turbocharging the prison industrial complex. He refuses to take any responsibility for the racism that he has been a proud proponent of for 4+ decades. To this day, Biden refuses to take any responsibility. In my last video, I told you about how just 3 nights ago he had his town hall and he was confronted on the subject of the '94 crime bill, and rather than do a mea culpa for the part that he played in mass incarceration, for spearheading mass incarceration in this country, he instead said, well, you need to be blaming the states. They were the ones who were locking up all these black people. Why, they misinterpreted the law and misused it. And he didn't say anything about the $13 billion pie that he was handing around. He didn't say anything about the fact that the states changed their laws simply because they all wanted a piece of that $13 billion pie. That was one of the requirements of the '94 crime bill. If you want to get any of that $13 billion that Joe Biden was handing out, you had to change your laws to bring them in line with the '94 crime bill requirements. He left that part out. He makes it seem like, oh, well, the states, they just were doing their own thing. No, they were doing exactly what Joe Biden wanted them to do. But he takes no responsibility for that.
Black bag, so don't fall out.
The rest of those panels, they don't mention it. Jordan Reed doesn't mention it. Tiffany Cross doesn't mention it. Forget about MSNBC. You might as well call it BSNBC. And this is supposed to be what counts as BSNBC's Black Show. This is the show that's supposed to be geared toward black people, and it's telling all of these lies by omission. And what makes this so damnable is you cannot be telling black people that the road to empowerment, or at least the road to better policies, runs through the Democratic Party, where you're leaving out the fact that the guy who's running for president put the laws in the books that helped to turbocharge the prison industrial complex. One of the main architects of the prison industrial state has been Joe Biden, and he's now running for president. And one of his partners in crime who used the laws that he put on the books is running as his vice president. It is damnable to lie to black people and tell them that there's a difference between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. And the truth of the matter is, when you look at what actually got put into law, Joe Biden's far worse than Trump if you look at what happened in the legislature. Even worse when you consider that the Democrats were taking money from Donald Trump up until a few years ago. Oh, but Jason Johnson's not through with his lying by omission.
Donald Trump, who has called on white nationalists to keep black people from voting.
Have you heard anything about Donald Trump making a claim like that? I'm no Trump supporter, so I could care less really if you're lying about Trump. I'm not here to stand up for Donald Trump's honor, because he has no honor. But the thing is, while you're busy talking about Donald Trump's lies, just make sure you're telling the truth about Joe Biden as well, so black people don't get fooled and tricked and deceived and think that they got political friends in places where they really don't. And while I'm sure that Donald Trump and the Republicans would like it if black people were politically neutralized, at least as far as voting against Republicans goes, keep in mind, Donald Trump's not the only one who has been supporting white supremacists. While Donald Trump was calling the Charlottesville Nazis very fine people, Joe Biden has been lifelong friends and been mentored by rabid segregationists like Strom Thurmond, who Joe Biden called one of my closest friends. Joe Biden lauded and praised anti-black racists like Senator Eastland. Biden boasted about having received an award from George Wallace in 1973. And Biden bragged that his state of Delaware sided with the Confederacy in the Civil War. This is who Joe Biden is. Joe Biden never met a good old boy that he didn't like, and he never met a black person that he did. But the very worst of Jason Johnson's lies by omission was yet to come. The fact that this scumbag would have the nerve to pull this next, it just goes to show you that when it comes to the depravity and the duplicity and the lies of these black bootlegs, there is no bond. Equating the death toll from COVID-19 to the middle passage of slavery, there seems to be no lie that's beneath them. And here's the part where he finally gets around to saying something about the deaths of black people at the hands of white supremacists with or without badges. This is what Jason Johnson says about that.
Donald Trump, whose Justice Department hasn't done anything about George Floyd, hasn't done anything about Breonna Taylor, hasn't done anything about Sandra Bland.
Again, Donald Trump has not done a damn thing about the black people who have been murdered by the police on his watch. The difference being, however, no black person in their right mind expects for Donald Trump, with his lifelong record of racism, to do anything about the police killing black people. It's no surprise to us. That doesn't make us cynical. We expect him not to do anything, and he kept his promise. He kept his word. He's never said that he would be defending black people from police violence, and he definitely held his end of the bargain on that one. Didn't do a damn thing to protect us. And we expected him to. However, we did expect differently when Joe Biden was vice president. The Obama administration didn't do anything about George Zimmerman, or Darren Wilson, or Daniel Pantaleo. Kamala Harris has refused to do anything about the murderers of Breonna Taylor. No promises or pledges there, mind you. None. This is totally consistent for Kamala Harris, by the way. When she was California Attorney General, she said that she refused to do anything about all the cops murdering black people in her state because she felt that that was a local issue. Yeah, she had the power to do something about it, but the local authorities should be allowed to do as they please. And I consider it particularly perverted that Jason Johnson dared to mention the murder of Sandra Bland. Donald Trump didn't become president until 2016. He didn't get sworn in until 2016. Sandra Bland was murdered in July 2015. Say, does anyone remember who was president in 2015? Better yet, do you remember who was vice president in 2015? I seem to think that it was Obama who was president, and Joe Biden was vice president. So why didn't Obama do anything about it when he was president? Why didn't Joe Biden say he hasn't pledged to do anything about it? Joe Biden has not made one promise. He wrote the crime bill. Get his Justice Department to go investigate the Sandra Bland murder, much less a matter of, I'm going to make sure that somebody's punished for it. He ain't said a damn thing. Just like Kamala Harris has said nothing about promising punishment for the killers of Breonna Taylor. This is why I call these black cable bootlicks the incompetent operative class. They're so busy trying to carry out the talking points that they get from their white leftist masters, so busy trying to, as they see it, stack the deck against the idea of black folks holding their vote until someone actually earns it. They're so busy trying to heap up some lies so they can point and say, see, look at how many talking points we've got here, and why it's just a mountain of blathering, and you've got to do what we say now. They're so busy blathering that they don't even realize that they contradict themselves.
Constantly. Yep.
The exact same arguments that you can make against Trump, you can make even worse ones against Biden. There's practically nothing you can point at. I'm looking to see how many laws had Donald Trump put on the books that were meant to extend the sentencing disparities between rock and powder cocaine.
Oh, guess what?
How many laws does Trump
Now these golf courses are going under.
Books regarding school segregation? Where is the Trump crime bill?
Doesn't that sound like Carl?
Thank you!
Industrial complex.
Don't
Donald Trump has been an advocate for racist policies, but Joe Biden has been somebody who actually puts them on the books and carries them out.
Your little golf thing.
So whatever argument you want to make against Trump,
Because
you
y'all
can
don't
make
want black
all
folks
those
at the
dang
golf course.
accusations against Joe Biden. Donald Trump
What do you think you're doing?
Odious because of his sentiment. Joe Biden is odious because of his sentiment and his actions. He's actually put concrete actions behind his racism. If we're going to be talking about a real comparison between Biden and Trump, we got to talk about what it is that Biden's done as well. That way we can
Now look at the Nubians, African Nubians. The one that brought up without defeat.
So for Donald Trump to reach out to Ice Cube or Steve Harvey or Jim Brown or anybody else like that and say, I'm the better option, he must think we're stupid.
No, reaching out to Ice Cube, that doesn't prove that.
But that's another.
That's
Now,
not a try.
what proof that Trump thinks we're dumb is that he does not make concrete promises to us that are in line with what we have demanded from him. If he says, well, go to my website if you want to see what I'm doing for black people. Well, you know, when it came to him talking about build the wall and other things that white people, especially those white right-wingers, want to hear, he didn't say go to my website. He was out there pounding the pavement, screaming and yelling at all of his rallies. When it comes to black people, on the other hand, the best he can say is, you're living in hell, and you can vote for me, what do you got to lose? Well, you're not saying what you're going to do for black people.
Don't come to us.
What do you got to lose? So you're treating black people as white people.
Yeah, I'm getting
Say what I'm going to do for black people. So go to my website. Just go to my website. You're treating the black polity as being some sort of dirty little secret that you prefer not to deal with. Now for Trump to be saying, vote for me, I'm not going to say what I'm going to do for you publicly. I'm going to give you some indistinct, unspecified blathering. I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of that, a little bit of lip service, very vague lip service. Yeah, it would be stupid to think we're going to vote for him under those circumstances, sure.
Do they got utensils there?
Happens to be Jason Johnson's not saying what the hell Biden's going to be doing, but don't worry, they'll tell us after the election, though. You got to vote for him first to find out. Well, for Jason Johnson and his fellow desperate black bootlicks to tell us to vote for an unspecified nothing, they're the ones who think that black people are stupid, especially if they think that we don't know what Biden has done. So Jason Johnson fails yet again because while he points out what Trump hasn't done, which is easy to do,
sad version
against himself. Johnson thinks that we don't know that just a few years ago was Biden telling us what he couldn't do. And even now, Biden's still telling us what he's not going to do. Johnson thinks that if he doesn't mention this, then we won't think of it, that nobody's going to bring it up.
Well, shit.
Well, if we relied on liars like Tiffany Cross to give us the facts, he would be right. But we have the new black media to bring the truth. Because the facts are, there's no good guys in this election. There's no good guys in this fight. When it comes to black people, Biden is every bit as racist as Trump, possibly more so. The similarities between Biden and Trump far outweigh the differences.
Yeah,
they may have some slight rhetorical variance, though you couldn't tell by listening most of the time. But none of these Negro bootlicks ever points that out because they want you to think that by voting for Biden, you're going to get someone who's not an anti-black racist.
Bullshit.
And that's a lie. Biden is an anti-black racist. He is a dyed-in-the-wool white supremacist. Has been his entire life. He is a coward and a pervert and a liar. But Jason Johnson conveniently leaves out all
three of them at one time, huh?
And neither Tiffany Cross nor anyone else on that panel even mentioned this, because this was a poorly disguised DNC rally pretending to be a news segment. A pro-Biden ad in drag that doesn't even have the decency to admit to what it is. But as the black media, we've smartened our people up. The days of getting away with this kind of nonsense propaganda are over. These chumps that you see here, they're the left wing of white supremacy's incompetent operative class. The safe Negroes who depend on the white media to help them make a living, mostly through useless speaking engagements and to help them hawk their books. And they'll gladly lie because that's the job. And speaking of jobs, that's what they're hoping to get. They're hoping to swing a political patronage job for themselves. A White House press secretary gig, a staffing job, be a staffer for some congressman or senator or a governor, anything. Right now they see themselves being on the cable news chitlin circuit. They need somebody to give them a job. You see, we're out here demanding the tangibles that our people need. White power has told these bootleg puppets to get us off of those demands. We gotta get these niggers off of those demands that they're making. We can't have this be a regular part of the political discourse. Go ahead and call them fringe. Say that, well, whatever you're demanding, the Democrats have already done it, or at least it's already on their drawing board. And you can't demand that Joe Biden propose anything. Proposing things is the main job that a candidate has. Their main job is to propose what they're going to do. But you had Jamil Smith say, you can't. Why are you asking him to propose anything? Because that's his job as a candidate. You can't ask him to propose anything. I mean, the contempt is absolutely palpable here. But these black bootlicks, they're lying, claiming that the Democrats are already doing what we said when they know damn well they're not. But you know what else we know? These morons are talking. God knows they talk, but nobody's listening. Tiffany Cross, she decided that now the segment needs to be wrapped up. She wanted to go ahead and she wanted to make certain that they came right up the middle of their contempt for Ice Cube, which is actually a proxy for their contempt for the black grassroots. All these black people who are putting pressure on the Democrats, and by extension putting pressure on these black bootlicks by proving that they can't control the black polity. These Negroes are out of control, and these bootlicks have failed to calm the Negroes down. Well, here's what Tiffany Cross had to say about that. But I gotta warn you before you listen to it, she's got a really nasal, high-pitched voice, so you might want to cover your ears or turn down the volume just a touch.
I mean, I think that's the frustrating part, right? Because the Congressional Black Caucus has a very comprehensive plan. Our friend Alicia Garza, one of the founders of Black Lives Matter, had a very comprehensive plan for the hubris that I see was going to come in and save the day for Black America. And he
save the day for Black America.
When Roland Martin was pressing him on some of these issues, and I encourage everybody to watch that interview with Roland Martin. It was great.
Did you get all that? Oh, she's frustrated because you see the Congressional Black Caucus, they've got a plan. So it's great to see MSNBC trying to dust off the desiccated husk of H.R. 40. But you notice how Tiffany Cross called this Garza woman our friend. And all of them started nodding when she said that. Our friend Garza, blah, blah, blah. Wow. So what does that tell you? What that tells you is the people who ain't been doing a damn thing to actually move the doggone needle for black tangibles, these are the friends of the black bootlicks on cable TV. These idiots are mobbed up with each other. This is no accident, no coincidence that these guys are all the way against us. This happens to be an organized affront by a bunch of organized bootlicks. So you see, ain't nothing random about this. All these clowns work for the exact same master. Whether it's Jason Johnson, whether it's Jordan Reed, Tiffany Cross, Jamil Smith, all these guys are mobbed up together doing white supremacy's bidding. And the bidding is to keep us contained and undermined. our friend indeed. Well, she's no friend of black empowerment. That's for dang sure. None of them are. And talking about this Garza woman, yet another one of these hand-picked nobodies who white supremacy has plucked from obscurity, some chunk you never heard of, some nobody who they're trying to promote. These are the politically reliable lapdogs that white supremacy's been trying to put forward as being some sort of phony baloney black grassroots. But of course, the only thing they're interested in is LGBT this, climate that. Oh, what about the environment? What about feminism? What about abortion? Abortion is something that black folks really, the black vote hinges on abortion, don't you know? Black people are really concerned about transgender bathrooms. The black vote will hinge on who has the best vote for transgender bathrooms. That's what these people are presenting. They're trying to take some of these clowns, these LGBT activists. This is their last gasp to try to make these chumps into a thing. They failed with D. Ray McKesson, so I guess this Garza woman, she's next on deck. And this is damned to fail too. You're not going to nominate who black leaders are. We're following the code, not any of these black bootlicks. You can give it up. But listen to what she says. I mean, she shows absolutely no respect for Ice Cube whatsoever, and that's the entire point. This is what the white media masters that she serves told her to do. You can't just get out there and say that you disagree with him. You got to really run Ice Cube into the ground, because you got to run him and the people online who sound like him. You need to run them into the dirt. Look, that hubris. No, the hubris of a bunch of worthless, irrelevant, talking, chattering mouths, a bunch of bought and paid for bootlicks on cable TV who ain't achieved a damn thing for black folks, and they're living off the crumbs the white media gives them. The hubris of a Tiffany Cross, thinking that she can speak for us. That's the hubris. That's the pride and the arrogance that we will not tolerate. And by the way, since I know that Tiffany Cross and her pals probably listen to this too, I got a message for you, Miss Cross. I didn't know who you were before this segment aired, and you've already blown any chance you might have had at being credible. The Congressional Black Caucus is a pack of sellouts whose job is to pacify black people into inaction. And the black media has already long since destroyed that H.R.
This senator from Florida.
And on a side note, H.R. 40's been out there for 30 years, Miss Cross.
I think she's about 15 years old.
You don't do research. I know research ain't really big for black shows, because you don't get
Jesus,
punished for being
something about Jesus and
Democrats have had control
Santa
of
Claus
the
or some
House of
bullshit.
Congress several times since H.R. 40
and he said, yeah, but you're contradicting yourself.
The Democrats control the executive
No, I'm not.
and the legislative branch in total was the first 2 years that Barack Obama was in office. But instead of H.R. 40, Democrats couldn't even bring that to the floor. Instead, they obsessed over universal health care, the Libby-Ledbetter Act, gay marriage, things that were of interest to their real constituents, white people. H.R. 40 was totally ignored. And the Congressional Black Caucus didn't seem to be too displeased by that.
Which tells you something.
I guess it's because of disproportionate number of the Congressional Black Caucus are immigrants or the children of immigrants. As far as they're concerned, anything about reparations, that is not going to help us. So the Dems have had every chance to take up the issue, and
actually it will.
Oh, but Tiffany Cross, she's got a plan to save
America will make other countries pay reparations by
getting our minds right. Tiffany Cross is going to get us straight. She's going to come in with a cape on and play Superman. She's going to be caping for white supremacy. And she tells us this time it'll be different. Sure, the Democrats ain't done a damn thing regarding a black agenda since the freaking 60s, but this time will be different. Again, you notice that not one of her guests points out what I just told you. They all act like the Democrats have just been gung-ho to push for black people's tangibles, and why the Democrats haven't had control of the House of Congress before now.
Bullshit.
You see how much these parasites leave out whenever you let them tell the story? Well, Tiffany Cross, this is why young black people don't listen to you or any of the other black bootlicks in the white media. And we're the black voters that you need to reach if you're going to have any influence with the black community. You want to call yourself getting control of Congress? You want to call yourself holding on to Congress? We're the people that you have to sway. And we're not listening to you. Well, except to expose your lies. We'll listen long enough to point out your lies, but we're not doing anything you say, and you're not going to tell us what to think. We will tell you what the facts are. Since you seem incapable of accepting the facts or speaking the truth, we're going to tell you what the facts are. And you can either report that, or you can remain irrelevant. Because the white media can give you a platform, but they cannot give you legitimacy. The new voices of black media, we're the ones who speak for the streets. You speak for whatever white media or white Democrat benefactor you're hoping to get some crumbs from. And by the way, for you to praise roly-poly Martin, you have no idea how dumb that makes you look. Nobody takes him serious. And for you to praise him, that marks you as being evil and laughing. While you're busy singing roly-poly Martin's praises and saying that he does a great segment, he don't do a damn great anything. You might want to pay attention to how roly-poly wound up in the position he is in. If there's one thing that all of you black cable nitwits need to learn from roly-poly Martin, it's that being a bootlick is a career path that doesn't come with a retirement plan. White supremacy has no permanent plans for any of its black mouthpieces. That includes you too, Tiffany Cross. See, that's the lesson you should have taken away from roly-poly Martin. Instead, the lesson you took away from it was, well, when white supremacy seems to put you on the phone, just keep begging, just keep begging. Yeah, roly-poly's trying to keep hope alive. Or should I say, he's trying to keep dope alive, because he's the biggest dope in the room, thinking that white supremacy is going to be calling him back up to the majors anytime soon. They've got him exactly where they want him. Black people are standing in their own power, and we're speaking our own minds, and you don't like that, do you, Tiffany Cross? She's frustrated. Why should she be frustrated? Black people are spelling out their demands, and it's loud enough to be heard. It's part of the political discussion, what we have been fighting for over a decade now, telling you that we were going to take control of the political discourse within the black community. I told you that over a decade ago. That was the stated mission of B1, that we were going to take control of the political discourse within the black community, and we have done it. And you see that the black mouthpieces on cable TV, they're frustrated. You see what frustrates me? Yeah, Miss Cross, you are frustrated, and it's easy to see why, because you're scared. You're absolutely helpless in the face of black people speaking and acting for ourselves. You're scared of where this trend is going, because you know this is what black people are doing. Hell, it's going to be decades of this. It's only going to get worse, right? You can see where the trend is going, and you're helpless to stop it. No wonder you're frustrated. You don't have an answer for this. You can't get us off of this one.
Okay, we're almost there. Park the wagon just ahead where we can get a nice spread of moonshine.
You guys are just sitting around.
Moonshine? Yep.
To the firing squad.
They gotta blow it up? Yep.
Then make a city with your joint chorus of complaints. Nothing but whining as a group about how black people don't listen to you. Yes, what's happening is black people are making it very clear. Our ballot is up for auction. And we are going to start off the trends by which the highest bidder is. You don't tell us what's going to be.
Burn it.
You what's going to be. You know, I was taught that's supposed to be democracy, but apparently the clowns over at BSNBC, the black bootlicks, they say that that's not right.
You gonna burn them up too?
I think he blows them up because he shoots the back.
Do some of the stuff they have been vaguely
Because he blows them up. I know he does.
You see, the black bootlicks, the black bootleg class, the black would-be head Negroes in charge, you know, like the Tiffany Cross,
some of the mornings,
yeah, Tones. What's this?
What's supposed to be this?
Hey, what's this supposed to mean?
From us running in circles, but the black mass didn't do the damn thing. So their problem, as far as they're concerned, why are we the problem? We do it great over here.
The CGI.
We don't take cues.
It's so
clear.
You
wouldn't know that you're watching a video game.
Mm-hmm.
You sort of down like, oh, so this is a movie. Like, no.
You're not going to shake us out of it. You're not going to back
Yeah, right.
us.
Like, no. And it make it even worse if someone in the video game is an actor you've seen. So you really would be like, no, that's the movie. I remember the actor. That's which one called? Yeah, that's an actor that they digitally mastered to put him in a video game. Like, Keep It Simple.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I did not know that was his name.
That's Snake.
I'll be doing
Yeah, MSNBC puts you on air.
You get caught so somebody comes behind you.
Yeah, because he actually was smart enough to have motherfuckers all around.
Yeah, circles.
You're on Team White Service.
Like custom. Circle around.
It's time.
Circle around there. You got your buddy beat.
They put your
Five. Little big ones.
And I also have $100.
Especially the black public body. Because black people are oversampled.
That I'm not a reasonable man.
So you're on TV.
Go on,
you know
then.
black folks saw that. And you get to dictate to these black people.
Yeah, what's wrong? You see black people on TV.
Oh, we're going to attack black service and that ideology of black
When you did,
only for the former
Yeah, that was
called black people on TV.
You know, I'm so frustrated. And imagine that hubris for this guy. Have you ever
It's not
seen
really
them
his
attack
fault, fellas. His mother
any of
drank.
these people in the alt-right like that?
Nope.
For all this.
Have you ever seen them talk about any of these other people like that? No, but that's the whole point. What they're pointing out is we're making it very clear that we're going to have some attacking Ice Cube. That's the agenda and the stance that he's taking.
See?
Yeah.
He blew up.
That's the lightweight going.
You got to contain all the structures.
Because that's what the media does. The TV shows. The Southern Sugar this weekend was the Ice Cube is not practical. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
No shit you snap, nigga.
That's the
Stay with that way. Go after him first. Danny Lee, he's in a bad way. He won't get far.
In the grass, if you go. Look on again.
Yeah. No, fuck. Yeah, he's hiding. They'll meet me at the. Yeah, back at the.
Get out of there.
No, I can't. I gotta make sure I get out of here. See, because I'll be missing money.
That's what she used to think.
That makes sense.
Thought to himself, I'm really get away from
Somebody right there in front of you.
Oh, shit.
Burning.
15 cents.
all of these younger black folks, they have contempt. Well-deserved. You're in a situation where you have to actually get a moonshine.
You gonna burn it? Yeah.
You get money.
You can't just tell lies and go away.
Okay.
Right.
You don't have the ability to be able to stand and protect yourself.
8, 9, something.
Yes, man. I want to say exactly what you all agreed to say before the meeting started.
9 cents.
God damn, they got 9 cents.
Sit.
9 cents.
Say Jesus. $11 cents. 13 cents. Job from you? Money from you? Contract from you? I don't even want contact with you. See over here, 12 cents.
We're not hoping in vain to get a white job. Or in a staff position as a
81 cents.
Damn.
We don't want to be the next Herman Cain
44 cents.
or the next Dr. Brazil. We damn sure don't want to be the next Roman Martin or the next Jordan. We're bitches with our people as black folks. We are not auxiliary of either. As the descendants of American slaves, foundation of Americans, survivors of slavery in America, separate us.
Oh, please, no.
We are a people, and groups don't have friends.
Groups have interests.
Far too long, our interests have been undermined by white supremacist
49 cents.
who sit among us to sow the seeds of discord, whatever it is we're trying to do. These people set us on white supremacy for the sake of trying to destroy us. These clowns understand that there's no way that they can have three voices of black media out here. This is a tough country. Not a dialogue. Their job is to promote unbelievable white supremacy.
11 cents.
Just even talking to us, the fact that if they even made that mistake, they would be rude.
10 cents.
They don't have the response or answer. Our groups are made to know that that's possible. We use it to some major. And as they're showing through tipping across the frustration, we are having a major impact. As I told Jason Jones, my side is winning. So this is what we see from the white media and expect for them to intensify. These
Shit. Get some cover.
That being the case, that tells you everything you know about these black experts. They are not here to represent black empowerment. Yeah, just wait for it. And then Jamil Smith says, you can't be expecting Biden to oppose anything.
Oh, yes, I can.
13 cents.
Do. Oh, you can't even promote. You can't even ask for a
8 cents.
No, that's the hubris. Tipping points.
6
Those
cents.
guys might get a pat on the back from their
12
white
cents.
sort of white editor or white shoulin carrying around. Oh, you might get the occasional nice from some staffer claiming to be Nancy Pelosi, because they ain't actually going to talk to you.
9 cents.
But when it comes to the black grassroots, you know, the ones you actually need to make the fool if you
9 cents.
chance of influencing elections, we give you a little sideshow thumbs down. Because you can keep your white media masters happy all you want. Their How's that working out for you? Do you see what we're saying being quieter and shrinking into irrelevance, or is it louder now than it's ever been? You better believe it now, it will be even louder than this. Oh, this is just the beginning, so Tiffany Cross, if you think that you're frustrated now, just keep on watching. The black grassroots are going to make you really hot. If you're not already subscribed to this YouTube channel, go ahead and hit subscribe button. Along with the bell icon, so whenever a new video is posted. And if you're already subscribed, check to make sure that YouTube hasn't unsubscribed. And of course, be sure to give the video a like, as well as share it on your social media. The white supremacists hate that. Now, that's it. You know, it's getting easier and easier to tell who the slow bits in the room are. Especially when you start making it very clear to people that black empowerment is not a free ride. That black empowerment makes demands of people. Because you're never going to get your power for free, and you certainly won't be able to keep it for stupid.
Man.
About 3.5 weeks ago, I did a video essay that apparently offended a whole lot of black folks, and I knew they would be offended because I'm not so naive as to think that
got a little out of hand
black
now.
folks
Don't
more
you?
than a few who are doing wrong who happen to lurk around here. That video essay was about black empowerment and marijuana maintenance. I said that pot haters wouldn't like this video essay, and they didn't. Got some of the most thumbs down that any of my videos have gotten.
He's just using you
once.
like she uses everyone else.
Of course, there's a lot of black people all of this was white supremacy and getting free well. That's nothing more than entertainment. It's something to listen to because whoever's speaking has a good delivery of oratory. Or perhaps they have a nice turn of phrase. Oh, they express themselves so well. Oh, that was a lousy good speech. All right, that's it. Yeah, I'm not so naive. I'm walking she was just to use good grass and other super forms of undesirable. Now, you're not going to get facing the message. You're going to let them know, nah, this ain't cool. By the way, if you draw the line at not black folks being killed, but rather at whether or not black empowerment and you getting high bits, if that's where you have to draw the line. Oh, brother, you had me see the gay meat getting high now. If you can't see what the hell's wrong with that, then black empowerment ain't for you. I did a whole video essay explaining how the British successfully used hoping to soften up China. And even after all that, you had fools who clearly must have been high, or so many of their brain cells wiped out by these drugs that there's no point trying to get through them, which is why I don't waste my time doing it. They just flew right over their empty, marijuana smoke-filled heads. But in case you thought that maybe I was...
Why do we have more sense than a little bit now? I said, why is it that we have more sense than a little bit?
Because you gave it to me.
They're in New York City with a little something they call joints for jabs. And the upshot of it is,
yeah, we get to stab you, you get to smoke weed.
The coronavirus vaccine that they've been having trouble getting people to come in and take the shot. Well, you go ahead and use marijuana as a rule now. That's what the power of be told you. You got our signature. You know how these good Negroes are. All you gotta do is offer some fried chicken, or in the case of Negroes, your proper fish fry. Go ahead and give us free fish. They'll show the local down in the mouth traitorous scumbag like Jim Clyburn making a damn thing for breakfast. Daughter of a tailor really to get corporations who are fighting against the door. He'll show you that free fish fry, and they'll be just so glad with some free food. You know how dumb Negroes are. How stupid black people are, right? That's all you gotta do. And in New York, they say, hell, we can do better. Free fish fry. You go ahead and give those free joints. And tell them, come and get this coronavirus shot. Why not? Don't you know, of course it worked. Oh yeah, you had a whole lot of practice. Shut up. Hey, man, give me some meat. You gotta get this needle first. You gotta take that shot in the arm first. Okay, you give me over here, give me a shot of the needle too. I'm trying to get my smoke on, baby. Just like that. I was telling you, white supremacy uses drugs that are slow-minded, the weak-willed, and the dim-witted to do what they want, to walk to their own destruction. A lot of y'all are like, oh man, what are you talking about? I would fall.
Oh, that mama and daddy who sung this stuff, did that sugar?
Yeah.
Mama was trying to sing with daddy.
You got the white supremacists in
Yeah.
New York City, the
In court.
using just a completely thoroughly blatant racial law that was meant to give them a pretext that they're like Bloomberg used to harass black people. Meanwhile, they're ignoring all the dope heads and cokeheads over by the stock exchange, not doing that with them. But these same people who are doing that for years, now here they are saying, oh, look, come in and see marijuana, and you get this coronavirus shot in the mouth. And we had people who thought that I was just whistling Dixie here, or that I was overstating the issue. Now, I don't expect that any of these pockets we have among us who are working around in these places like this, I don't expect you to all this. There's no real procedure. But for the rest of you, just understand, if you have any question about white supremacy ways to use drugs as baits to get you to do
Anesthetize your ass.
black media isn't just making that stuff up. It's not something that should be hard to figure out. If it's black, it becomes like Euclidean geometry. All you gotta do is look at white supremacy's track record. Malcolm told you about it back in the 60s. And you didn't believe, obviously, so now you're too dumb to believe him. He pointed out to you, every time you break that seal on a liquor bottle, that's a government seal you're breaking. Because if the white supremacists didn't want you to have it, you wouldn't. Tell me something, you see the white supremacists trying to figure out some way to make sure that you get your reparations check? You see them trying to find a way to cut that check. You see them writing laws saying that any states who refuse to punish the police harshly are going to see their federal dollars cut. You see them saying, hey, if we got some city where we have to come in and take over your police department, there's going to be a federal penalty that goes along with that. You don't see that, do you? So they make it very clear, you can do whatever you want, the feds ain't doing nothing about you. The white supremacy understands when you're dealing with people who are willfully being gullible, and they will chew you up and crap you out, and they should. If you can't see, if you're too dense to understand, white supremacy uses drugs, or uses alcohol, or uses whatever vice, whether it be European or what have you, in order to lure the gullible, the stupid, and the willfully ignorant to their doom, then they're just a show. Jason Black said, we have those plantations where we get two potheads, our mutton heads, our meat heads, and our chicken heads. A whole lot of Negroes should have left on those plantations. And we're not dragging them to empowerment either. Nobody's going to drag them out. If the black media tells you what's up, that's supposed to be the end. And if you draw the line at, well, brother, you was with me. I was with you when you were talking about that whole police thing. It's just raw, man. You talking about me and my marijuana. That's too much, bro. That's too much. Trying to sanctify and glorify self-destruction. And you got your enemy telling you, hey, come on in. We know how dumb you are. We got this needle here, but before you can get this joint that you're looking for, you got to take the needle first. And nobody asks where the money for this stuff comes from. Where do they find the funding for stuff like this? You're going to believe more than likely, more than a little public money went into this. You know, there's an old expression among those consumer advocate types, you know, the Ralph Naders and such. They got an old saying that when some business or merchant is giving you something allegedly for free, that means you're the product.
Thank you.
When television tells you, oh, we'll put this TV show on for you, just go ahead and turn on your TV and we'll go ahead and put this TV show on to entertain you. Oh, I'm going to give me a TV show for free. No, what that means is the TV show isn't the product. You are the audience that they try to gather. That's the
Now, I was
product.
so looking forward
You see,
to
that's how
seeing
business
you.
works.
But I got you.
In every transaction, there are three elements, three essential elements:
Give him a
a
drink.
buyer, a seller, and a product.
In my goddamn
Goddamn drink!
Nobody gives the product.
She was in love with him.
Oh, they might give
Well,
a few
she cared
samples
about
up front. You better believe, especially if they've been
You
around
left
for
me
a
to
while,
die.
ain't nobody
What was
giving
I
that
supposed to
product for
do?
free. The point that I'm trying to make
Gave
is
you my
the black
trust.
media tells you what's up. The
Power.
black media tells you what's in your interest.
Listen to you.
When we tell you,
You can't
this
see
whole
yourself,
thing with
man. You
marijuana and
never
some
could.
black folks have decided
I
is
see
more
myself.
important to them than the very breath of life.
Can't not
When we tell
see
you that white
myself.
supremacy is setting you up, when we
I
tell
won't
you that
slink
they've
off like
already
a
figured out how
coward.
they're going to use your addiction, your weakness,
Look you
your
dead in the
willful caving in and surrendering to their
I had
process
back up
in
like,
order
oh,
to manipulate you like a dog. We're not just saying that. We ain't
Gone,
just slamming
but-
No,
it.
that was this lady.
But hey,
So
you just
far
need some
away,
fools
I've
who are so
never
used
In
to
college.
She didn't
living
shoot
their
him.
lives
She was
such
in
as they
college?
are
Yeah.
in a marijuana-induced fog.
And
Hell, why come out of it
I
now?
didn't. I mean, I.
Some kind
I
of
know
club.
lost cause when I
And
see
his other
these
student was in
who's
there.
arguing to hold on to the
She
very
liked
vices
him and he
that
liked
white
her.
supremacy is going to use
But
to
her
send
mother
them
told her,
to
you
the bottom
do
of
it,
the ocean.
you never come
That's
in
fine
touch
by
with me.
me.
You
I'm
know
not
why?
here to argue
Yeah,
with
he's
you
black.
about the necessity of what
He's a
black
darky.
empowerment
And
demands.
she married, okay, she got married, nope, I think she don't know about kids. He got married, divorced, he had a stroke, she found him in a nursing home, and what's him asked him, she said, if he actually married him, would you marry him?
You
He
show me
smiled.
the army when they sit
She
around
took
and
him out of the
say,
nursing home and said
you
he
basic
is in her
training,
home.
Yeah,
here's your
yeah.
choice. You can't go into battle without being high. You need to go ahead and smoke some. You show me any damn army that does that. You show me any group who's running around getting their guys high before the fight. So the higher the better. Just go ahead and smoke up, please. You know exactly what the hell it is.